Chapter 804. Dongfang Hui's face darkened. Mrs. Su clearly meant that Dongfang Yu did not meet the standards of the Su family. Mrs. Su, how am I not following the rules? Dongfang Yu, who was standing aside, could not help but step forward and ask unhappily. Madame Su glanced at her indifferently and didn't answer her question. Su Qingyan, who was standing behind Su Hongyu, poked his head out and said with a smile, Miss Dongfang. Women have 4 virtues. Women's speech, women's work, women's appearance and women's virtue. How many virtues do you have? Women's speech did not need a glib tongue and it was appropriate. Dongfang Yu was quite eloquent, but she had never used it on the right occasion. As for women's appearance, Dongfang Yu could not pass the test just because she had practiced the art of seduction. Women's virtue was even more nonsense. For a woman who was planning how to make use of her husband's family to achieve her own industry before marriage, women's virtue meant nothing to her. In short, Dongfang Yu could marry anyone she wanted, but there was no way she could marry into the Su family, let alone adore. Dongfang Hui's eyes fell on Su Qingyan. Is this the 5th young master? Su Qingyan did not seem to notice the pressure in her eyes. He stepped forward with a smile and cupped his hands. I am Su Wu. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Dongfang. Dongfang Hui smiled and said, the 5th young master is eloquent. Su Qingyan smiled and said, please forgive me for my rudeness. But my eldest brother is thin-skinned and is embarrassed to say many things. As his younger brother, I can't help but say a few words. My eldest brother will be in charge of the Su family in the future. If he marries a disgraceful sister-in-law, the Su family will lose face, won't it? Su Hongyu frowned slightly and glanced at Su Qingyan disapprovingly. But there was no reproach in his tone. Obviously, Su Qingyan's words also touched his heart, but he could not say it directly because of his identity. If he really did not want to hear Su Qingyan's rudeness, why did he wait until he finished speaking? At this point, Dongfang Hui also understood that the marriage could not be discussed today. She wasn't the kind of person who didn't know when to stop. Instead of sitting here and continuing to be humiliated, it was better to leave early and go back to think of a good plan. Thinking of this, Dongfang Hui adjusted his expression and said with a faint smile, in that case, we have disturbed Prince Ding and Princess today. I'll take my leave first. Yili didn't urge her to stay. She smiled and said, Madam, take care. Dongfang Hui nodded and said to Dongfang Yu, let's go. Dongfang Yu bit the corner of her lips and looked at Su Qingchen. Unfortunately, Su Qingchen did not seem to notice her gaze at all. She calmly lowered her eyes and drank her tea. Dongfang Yu's face turned pale. She suddenly opened her mouth and said, 5th young master Su said that there are 4 virtues for women. How many virtues does Princess Ding have? You are shut up. Dongfang Hui scolded harshly. Dongfang Yu's eyes reddened when he was scolded by his master in front of so many people, but he stubbornly refused to admit defeat. Madame Su smiled mildly, the infinite boundless mountain is really well educated. Su Qingyan said with a smile, Sister Li naturally has all 4 virtues. More importantly, Prince Ding likes someone like her. The Su family doesn't like someone like you. No matter how many rules there were, they couldn't avoid the word like. Not to mention that Yili was a publicly acknowledged virtuous wife. No, in the eyes of many people she was no longer just a wife. The name of Princess Ding was enough to stand side by side with Prince Ding. Even if Yili didn't know anything, as long as Prince Ding liked her, there would be no problem. Similarly, even if Dongfang Yu was outstanding in everything and had outstanding looks, the Su family didn't like such a daughter-in-law. It was useless to say anything. And the Su family's requirements for their daughter-in-law were obviously different from those of the Prince Ding mansion. If Dongfang Yu really had Yili's ability, the Su family might not refuse. The problem was that she didn't. Dongfang Yu's face was as white as paper. Dongfang Hui couldn't bear to see her disciple so embarrassed. She glanced at her unhappily and said, Why aren't you leaving? Dongfang Yu had no choice but to follow behind her master silently. After sending off the guests, Su Qingyan smiled and went up to Su Qingchen saying, Big brother, how was it? Did brother get it right? Su Qingchen looked at him mildly, What did I get right? Don't deny it. That Dongfang Yu likes you. Look at her eyes just now. It was as if you had abandoned her. Su Qingyan smiled. Flap. Mrs. Su raised her hand and slapped him on the forehead. What do you mean by abandoning her? What kind of nonsense have you learned in the past few years? Let me tell you, the women of the infinite boundless mountain are not allowed to enter our Su family. Su Qingyan covered his forehead and said in confusion, Mother, Dongfang Yu definitely can't marry into our family. Big brother definitely won't like her. Madame Su snorted and said, Not only your big brother but no one else. Not even Dongfang Yu. After saying that, she waved her sleeves and left. Su Qingyan touched his forehead and looked at Su Hongyu saying, Father, why do I feel that mother is implying something? Su Hongyu raised his hand and knocked on his forehead. You think too much. He waved to the others and left. Su Qingyan looked at Yili and the other two sadly. Why am I always the one who gets hurt? His big brother bullied him, his mother hit him, and now even his father, who was so elegant and proud, hit him. Su Qingchen looked at him with a faint smile. Su Qingyan hurriedly shrank back and ran out like a wisp of smoke. Dongfang Hui is a smart person. Su Qingchen knocked on the armrest and said mildly. Smart people are still pissed off by young Master Qingchen. Emo Shuyao said lazily. Su Qingchen smiled mildly. That's for Dongfang Yu. If it weren't for Dongfang Yu, Dongfang Hui wouldn't be so easy to deal with. Brother Qingchen, you seem to hate Dongfang Hui? Emo Shuyao asked curiously. It was rare for Su Qingchen to express her dislike for someone. Logically speaking, Su Qingchen shouldn't have met Dongfang Hui before. Hearing this, Yili couldn't help but look at Su Qingchen curiously. In fact, it wasn't just Su Qingchen. Madame Su's attitude towards Dongfang Hui was also a bit strange. Yili couldn't help but guess that the relationship between Dongfang Hui and eldest uncle wasn't as simple as eldest uncle said. But it wasn't good to recklessly guess the affairs of the elders. She could only suppress it in her heart. Su Qingchen didn't hide it and said mildly, It's nothing. I just stole a few letters from Dongfang Hui. Could it be? Mr. Hongyu really had a confidant outside? Looking at the similar expressions on the two people's faces, Su Qingchen shook his head helplessly and said, What nonsense are you thinking? It was just Dongfang Hui's one-sided entanglement. Father didn't even see the letters. But Mother and I happened to see it. At that time, Mother was just pregnant with fourth brother. Seeing Dongfang Hui's confidence, we were a bit depressed. Yili blinked and said, Eldest uncle didn't know what Dongfang Hui meant? Su Qingchen thought for a moment. I don't think so. I took all the letters she sent to the Su family. The first one was just some words of thanks. Chapter 805. Big brother didn't give the letter to first uncle? Yili asked. Su Qingchen frowned. Father wasn't at home when he received the first and second letters. The letters after that were a little. I was still a little young then and didn't think things through. Su Qingchen wasn't even 10 years old then, and didn't understand many things, especially when it came to relationships between men and women. Thus, she didn't think of the best way to deal with it. Actually, it wouldn't have been a big deal if she had directly sent the letter to Mr. Hongyu. However, it could be said that Mr. Hongyu didn't know about Dongfang Hui's feelings back then, and wouldn't feel troubled by their past relationship when dealing with infinite boundless mountains matters. Of course, Yili believed that Mr. Hongyu wouldn't let personal matters affect his work. If that's the case, first aunt, Su Qingchen said, Mother knows what father is thinking and trusts him. It's just that Dongfang Hui still wrote that kind of letter when she knew that father already had a wife and a child. Thus, Mother didn't give her any face. Big brother also hates Dongfang Hui because of this? Yili asked. Su Qingchen pondered for a moment and then sighed, maybe it's because she's the first person I hate. Hearing this, Yili couldn't help but smile. Outsiders only thought that young Master Qingchen was an immortal young master since birth. If he didn't say it, who would know that young Master Qingchen had also done some stupid tricks for the sake of his parents' feelings and a third party who wanted to intrude into his family? Dongfang Hui probably won't give up so easily either, not to mention Dongfang Yu's wishes. It's just that this matter has caused a huge uproar. If she chooses someone else now, it will be a huge blow to infinite boundless mountains and Dongfang Yu's reputations. Thinking about what had just happened, Su Qingchen frowned. Emo Shuyao said nonchalantly, It doesn't matter if she likes to pester us. In any case, the ones who lose face in the end won't be us. Also, Enchanting needs time to make arrangements, and we also need some time to investigate infinite boundless mountains' background. If they want to make a fuss, let them. Su Qingchen said, Dongfang Hui is not a stubborn person. What if she cancels the marriage and simply wants to cooperate with the Prince Ding mansion? This way, while Dongfang Yu's reputation would suffer some damage, Infinite Boundless Mountain's prestige and reputation would not be damaged in the least. As for Dongfang Yu, as long as this matter passed in another 2 years, with Infinite Boundless Mountain as her backing, she would not have to worry about not being able to marry into a good family. Mo Xiuyao frowned. No matter what, the Prince Ding mansion has no intention of cooperating with Infinite Boundless Mountain. Compared to their so-called cooperation they were assisting. I prefer annexation. Besides, now is not the time to make fun of Lei Zhenting. Because of Yi Li, Mo Xiuyao did not look down on women. However, a group of women who thought they were smart had been dreaming of secretly controlling the world for hundreds of years. Mo Xiuyao wasn't in the mood to deal with such people. Get someone to spread the news of Dongfang Hui to Mo Jingli. Right, give him a share of Renqining as well. At the end of the day, she is a descendant of the previous dynasty, and seems to have some relation to Infinite Boundless Mountain as well. Mo Xiuyao smiled. Su Qingqin's handsome face rose slightly. Let Mo Jingli and Renqining pester them? Good idea. These two were people who would do anything to achieve their goals. While it would be impossible for them to deal with the Prince Ding mansion in Glass City, it would definitely be no problem for them to cause some trouble for Dongfang Hui. Mo Xiuyao rubbed his nose. This way, I will also have time to consider how to greet Renqining. Where is that Tan Jiji now? Yi Li said, in the dungeons of the Prince Ding mansion. Very good. Accompany me to see him. Mo Xiuyao's eyes flashed with a faint cold light. If an outsider saw this, their scalp would definitely go numb, not knowing who Prince Ding was scheming against. Dongfang Hui and Dongfang Yu returned to their temporary residence. Without waiting for Dongfang Yu to say anything, Dongfang Hui stared at her coldly and said, from now on, don't mention the marriage with the Su family. Dongfang Yu was stunned. She did not understand why her master suddenly changed her mind after just one trip to the Prince Ding mansion. Master, Dongfang Hui waved her hand, no need to say anything more. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough today? The Su family will not agree to marry you. Master, they won't. Young Master Qingqin is just... Dongfang Hui interrupted her. You think it's just Su Qingqin? No one in the Su family will agree. However, the Su family will never force their children to marry as long as young Master Qingqin. Will Su Qingqin marry you? Dongfang Hui asked coldly. Dongfang Yu was speechless. Looking at her master's cold eyes, she said unwillingly, but if I don't join the Su family, then the Infinite Boundless Mountain and the Prince Ding mansion. Prince Ding will definitely not let me marry into the mansion. Looking at the ignorant disciple in front of her, Dongfang Hui sighed helplessly. Her tone softened a little before she said, it's my fault. You are not suitable to be the successor of the Infinite Boundless Mountain at all. It was true that the successors of the Infinite Boundless Mountain all married the rulers of various countries, but that was because they all knew how to scheme and how to advance and retreat. Dongfang Yu did not know these at all. Even if she wanted someone to help her secretly, it would be very difficult. Master, you don't want me anymore? Hearing Dongfang Hui's words, Dongfang Yu's face turned pale and she said in panic. Dongfang Hui patted her on the back of her hand. How can I not want you? You are my only disciple. Don't interfere in today's matters. I will send someone to send you back to the Infinite Boundless Mountain in a few days. I still hope that you will take over the Infinite Boundless Mountain in the future. The Infinite Boundless Mountain was isolated from the rest of the world. Dongfang Yu did not know the ways of the world, but she was not stupid by nature. With the help of the elders and stewards, it would not be a problem for her to take over the Infinite Boundless Mountain in the future. It was just that the situation at the foot of the mountain was indeed not suitable for her. Master, all right, you can leave, Dongfang Hui said in a low voice. Seeing that her master's expression was not very good, Dongfang Yu could only turn around and leave. In the room, Dongfang Hui looked at the empty room in a daze. After a long time she sighed helplessly. After not seeing him for so many years, she thought that she had already forgotten him. Now that she suddenly saw his face again, she knew that she had never forgotten him. But that person. Chapter 806. In a secluded corner of the Prince Ding mansion in a dark and cold dungeon, a disheveled man with messy clothes sat on the floor of the cell in a daze. Even though it was the end of the hot June, this underground dungeon still felt cold and gloomy. Compared to other places, although this dungeon was still cold and gloomy, It was still relatively clean and did not have any terrifying torture tools. However, the man with a face full of stubble was currently staring blankly, as if he had lost his mind. If possible, he even hoped that someone would torture him and give him a good beating. At least this way he could feel that he was still alive and that he was not the only person in this world. In fact, he knew that he was not the only person left in this world. Outside this cold and gloomy dungeon, there must be a lively and joyous atmosphere with people coming and going. However, this had nothing to do with him. He was locked up here and could not hear a single sound from outside. He could not even see the prison guards. No one would appear in front of him and no one would speak to him. Even the daily delivery of food and water was done silently. He could not remember how long it had been since he had seen a living person or spoken to a living person. When he was first locked up, he would still curse loudly, but later on he did not even have the strength to curse. Gradually he forgot how long he had been locked up here. A series of strange footsteps sounded outside the door. The man came back to his senses and his eyes flashed with a trace of light. He quickly stood up and ran towards the door. However, the long period of imprisonment and the daily meal that could not even be considered a simple tea made his body weak. He only took a few steps before he fell to the ground. The door of the dungeon was opened from the outside and 2 guards dressed in black came in. One on the left and one on the right. They picked up the man and walked out. The dungeon of the Prince Ding mansion was very clean because there were not many people locked up in it. The guards carried the man through 2 or 3 empty cells and walked into a spacious hall. They raised their hands and threw the man on the ground. "Young Master Tan, long time no see. Have you been well?" Mo Shuyao held Yi Li's hand as they sat in the middle of the hall, looking at the disheveled man on the floor with interest. Mo Shuyao. Perhaps it was because he hadn't spoken for a long time, but Tan Jiji's voice was a little hoarse. However, the way he looked at Mo Shuyao was absolutely fiery. Mo Shuyao also didn't care about Tan Jiji's gaze that seemed to want to tear him apart. He smiled faintly and said, "I came here today to tell young Master Tan some good news." Tan Jiji stared coldly at Mo Shuyao. Of course, he did not believe that Mo Shuyao would tell him any good news. Mo Shuyao raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Young Master Tan, you may leave now." "What?" Tan Jiji was stunned, unable to react for a moment. "I said that from today onwards, young Master Tan is free. He didn't have to stay in this dungeon anymore. Or was young Master Tan addicted to staying here? You don't want to leave?" Mo Shuyao repeated patiently. "You would be so kind? Let me out?" After not speaking for so long, Tan Jiji's words were a little incoherent. However, after a few sentences he recovered. "What's your goal?" Mo Shuyao nodded with satisfaction. "Not bad, your brain hasn't gone bad after being locked up for so long." Of course, he wouldn't let him out without any conditions. "Your conditions?" Tan Jiji asked. At this moment he even felt that no matter what Mo Shuyao said he would agree to it. Only those who had truly lost their freedom would understand the value of freedom. Similarly, he didn't want to stay in that cell where he was the only one who was always quiet. Mo Shuyao smiled and said, "Enchanting is in Glass City right now. Young Master Tan, I have always been curious. Between you and Enchanting, who is the last descendant of the royal family Lin Yuan? Or are you both? Or are you both not?" Tan Jiji's expression changed and he said in a low voice, "Of course it's me." Mo Shuyao nodded with satisfaction. It seemed that after being locked up for 2 years, Tan Jiji's ambitions still hadn't been completely wiped out. However, this was good. If he really didn't have anything left, then Tan Jiji would be useless. "Is that so?" "Ren Qining doesn't think so. She is now the king of the northern region. Who knows when she might change back to the previous dynasty's title. Although I don't think the chances are high, at least it's better than you, right?" Mo Shuyao smiled. Tan Jiji's expression changed. He stared at Mo Shuyao and said, "You want me to help you deal with Ren Qining?" Mo Shuyao smiled and said, "You don't need to be so nervous. No matter if you agree or not, I will let you out. You can also choose to help Ren Qining go against I after you leave. I just don't know if Ren Qining will accept you or not." Actually, the answer was very obvious. If Tan Jiji was someone else, Ren Qining might have put him in an important position. However, their identities made it impossible for them to coexist. There was only one Lin Yuan, a descendant of the previous dynasty. They both knew that one of them was fake. Therefore the one who survived was the real one. Tan Jiji was silent for a while. Then he asked, "Even if I agree, what's the use? You said it yourself. He is now the king of the northern region. And Tan Jiji laughed self-deprecatingly and said, I am a prisoner of the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Xiuyao said, I don't think you can kill Ren Qining. You just need to give him some trouble. As for other things, there will naturally be someone else to do it. You're not afraid that I will go back on my word after I leave? Tan Jiji asked. Mo Xiuyao shrugged and said, so what if you go back on your word? Dr. Lin saved Li Li and Xiao Bao's lives. For his sake I won't kill you. But, if you do something you shouldn't do, I have already repaid Dr. Lin for saving my life. If Tan Jiji did anything else then he wouldn't be embarrassed to kill him. By father. When Dr. Lin was mentioned Tan Jiji couldn't help but be stunned. That year in the tomb of the previous dynasty, he had already cut off all ties with Dr. Lin. He didn't expect that he would still be alive after falling into Mo Xiuyao's hands. It was all thanks to him. After thinking for a while, Tan Jiji finally nodded and said, I promise you. No matter what he couldn't go back to the prison. He suspected that if Mo Xiuyao didn't come back in a year, he wouldn't be able to bear it and would commit suicide. Mo Xiuyao nodded with satisfaction. Very good. Li Li, I'll leave him to your arrangements. Yi Li nodded and said to Tan Jiji with a smile, after young Master Tan goes out, you should settle down and take care of your body. After that, there will naturally be someone to find you. Tan Jiji looked at Yi Li and nodded, thank you, princess. Yi Li thought for a while and said, if young Master Tan has time, you can go see Dr. Lin. He has opened a medical clinic in the city. Tan Jiji shook his head and said, let's forget it. We have nothing to do with each other. Hearing him say so, Yi Li didn't force him. In fact, if Dr. Lin and Tan Jiji didn't have anything to do with each other, then their lives would be more stable. Chapter 807. Having said what needed to be said, Mo Xiuyao pulled Yi Li up, saying to Tan Jiji, right, if young Master Tan has nothing to do, it's best that you don't wander around the city. Right now it's not just Ren Qining in Glass City. Mo Jingli, noble consort Lu and Lei Zhenting are all in Glass City. Lei Zhenting didn't have much enmity with Tan Jiji, but it was different for Mo Jingli and noble consort Lu. No matter how weak Mo Jingli was, if he wanted to kill the current Tan Jiji, it would still be a piece of cake. Also, the Dechu state has already moved south of the Cloud Mist River. The Dechu state is finished. Young Master Tan's wish is about to be fulfilled. The Dechu state moved south? Then the Chu capital. Tan Jiji was shocked. Mo Xiuyao said, the Dechu state's Chu capital and the Western Tomb's imperial city are now eyes. Tan Jiji was silent. In these short 2 years he had missed too much. Right now what he needed to do the most was to understand the current situation and what exactly had happened in these 2 years. Mo Xiuyao no longer paid any attention to Tan Jiji, leaving the dungeon side by side with Yi Li in a good mood. In the next few days the Prince Ding mansion seemed to have quietened down. However, the people outside the Prince Ding mansion were still busy. Someone had leaked the news that the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain had come to Glass City. Within a few days Mo Jingli, Ren Qining and the others had all gone to pay their respects. Even the unrelated Yelu Yi and Yelu Hong had gone to join in on the fun. Although the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain claimed to have chosen their lord on behalf of the heavens, they still knew their limits at the end of the day. The northern tribes of the barbarians beyond the Great Wall was definitely not within their scope of choice. And the most active of all was naturally Mo Jingli. In the Prince Ding mansion, Ying sat opposite Yi Li, sobbing non-stop. Yi Li didn't try to persuade her. She just sat there and waited for her to finish crying. After a long time Ying finally stopped. She looked at Yi Li with tears in her eyes and said, "Third sister, I regret it so much. Why did I marry him? Back then he clearly said that he would treat me well for the rest of my life. But now. Yi Li raised her eyebrows and asked softly, "What happened? Tell me properly. What's the use of crying?" Ying wiped her tears bitterly and nodded. "Third sister, you're right. I won't cry. It's not worth crying for that bastard. I must have been blind to have taken a fancy to him back then. No wonder third sister didn't take a fancy to him back then. Prince Ding is really good to you." Speaking of this, Ying couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Back then in the Chu capital, who didn't pity the Yi family's third miss not only lost the position of Princess Li, but also married a disfigured good-for-nothing in a wheelchair. But now, although Prince Ding had a head of white hair, how many men in the world could compare to his appearance and bearing? Not to mention his devotion to Yi Li, which was the object of envy of all the women in the world. Qing Shuang, who was standing behind Yi Li, secretly pursed her lips. If this fourth miss had married Prince Ding back then, she would have cried until she was half dead. But now she was jealous of their princess consort? Yi Li didn't care about her jealous words and asked faintly, "What happened?" Yi Ying sobbed as she described how Mo Jingli ran to Dongfang Yu and Dongfang Hui every day to curry favor. He even discussed with his confidants that if Dongfang Yu was willing to marry, they would remove her position as princess consort. The more she spoke, the sadder she became. Before she finished, Yi Ying cried again. Looking at Yi Ying, who was crying like a bag, Yi Li could only sigh helplessly. For the first time, she doubted whether her idea of letting Yi Ying be Mo Jingli's spy was reliable. Or should she let Yaoji think of more ways? But thinking about it again, Qin Feng was not young anymore. Although she didn't know whether their relationship had progressed, it wasn't good to let Yaoji stay in the Muyang Marquis residence. "Third sister, what should I do?" Ying asked with red eyes. Ying was not a fool. If Mo Jingli had thought of her as Princess Ding's sister in the past, compared to the coveted power of Infinite Boundless Mountain, it was not enough. If Infinite Boundless Mountain's Dongfang Yu was really willing to marry Mo Jingli would definitely remove her without hesitation. She was not young anymore and she had fallen out with her mother because of Yi Yu. Other than Mo Jingli, she had no one else to rely on. Moreover, although Yi Ying was a little selfish, she still couldn't do something like noble consort Lu. Yi Li thought for a while and comforted her. "Don't worry, even if Mo Jingli really marries Dongfang Yu, I can at least guarantee that you won't be demoted to a side consort." Ying didn't believe it. How could a girl from Infinite Boundless Mountain be willing to be a side consort? It might be possible to be Mo Xiuyao's side consort, because Yi Li's backing was also very strong. The Su family definitely held an important position in the Prince Ding mansion now. But she couldn't. She was alone in Jiangnan with no one to rely on. Yi Li smiled faintly. "Why would I lie to you? Even if we weren't close, outsiders still know that you are my sister. If you were demoted to a side consort, would I have a lot of face? If it really doesn't work, I'll let Mo Jingli choose 2 main consorts. Both of them are of the same age." "But can't we?" Ying said unwillingly. Yi Li smiled. "Can't let Dongfang Yu marry Mo Jingli? It's not impossible. But do you think that Mo Jingli will vent his anger on you, or even kill you in a place that we don't even know about?" Yi Ying shuddered. After following Mo Jingli for so many years, Yi Ying knew how vicious Mo Jingli was. Thinking about how Yi Yu had been burned to death, Yi Ying's expression turned even uglier. It had to be said that Mo Jingli had taken the blame for Yi Yu's death. At least, whether it was the Yi family or Yi Ying, they all thought that Mo Jingli was responsible for Yi Yu's death. "We are sisters, so you have 2 choices. Stay in Glass City and cut off all ties with Mo Jingli. You are the daughter of the Yi family after all, and if you return to the Yi family, father and grandmother won't leave you alone. From then on, you can live an ordinary life. The second choice is to follow Mo Jingli back to Jiangnan. The only thing I can do is to hold on to the position of your princess consort. As for what happens in the future, that's up to you." Yi Ying's expression was conflicted. After a while she shook her head. "No, I want to go back. I can't go back to the Yi family. I am Princess Consort Li. My child." Yi Li's eyes flashed. "I will help you find your child. Once I have news, I will send someone to inform you." "Third sister, why are you so good to me?" Ying was not stupid. She would not forget that her relationship with Yi Li was not good in the past. Yi Li might help her with some trivial matters, but these matters obviously required more effort. Yi Li still helped her without hesitation. She could not help but suspect Yi Li's motives. Yi Li did not intend to use any pleasantries to brush her off. She smiled faintly. "It's nothing much. If Mo Jingli really marries Dongfang Yu, it will be very dangerous for the Prince Ding mansion. As long as you occasionally give me some news, it will be fine. Don't worry, I won't ask you to do anything dangerous. I can also promise you that if you encounter any danger in the future, I can guarantee that you will be able to escape unscathed." Chapter 808. What if Prince Li doesn't marry Dongfang Yu? Then you can treat it as me doing a good deed. It can also be considered as fulfilling our blood ties, Yi Li said indifferently. Yi Ying lowered her head and pondered. She understood Yi Li's words. If Emo Jingli really married Dongfang Yu, her life would not be good. But if she had the help of the Prince Ding mansion, all right, I promise you. Yi Li nodded in satisfaction and handed her a handkerchief. Since you still want to see your child, don't always cry when something happens. Now you should understand that crying alone won't solve many problems. Don't worry, even if Emo Jingli goes to Dongfang Yu, it will not affect your position in the princely mansion. I will help you. Thank you, third sister. Ying wiped her tears and said softly. Princess, Princely requests an audience. Wei Lin came in and reported. Yi Li smiled and glanced at Ying. She smiled and said, it just so happens that I also have some things to discuss with Princely. Invite him in. Hey. Ying bit her lip and said angrily, I don't want to see him. All right then, go to the painting pavilion in front and sit for a while. What a silly child. Did you really think that Emo Jingli was here to coax you? She called for someone to take Ying away. After a while, Emo Jingli walked in from the other side. From afar, Emo Jingli saw the woman in green sitting by the lake. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Emo Jingli suddenly realized that he could still clearly remember the first time he saw Yi Li after the engagement was annulled. Although Yi Li had embarrassed him at Shendexian, that was the first time he had a vague feeling that this Yi Li was different from what he had thought. After so many years, Yi Li's appearance had not changed much. Perhaps it was because she had a few children, but she had gained a different kind of elegance and gentleness. King Li, seeing Emo Jingli walking towards her, Yi Li nodded but did not rise to greet him. Princely, please take a seat. Emo Jingli sat down in silence. Seeing Qing Shuang bring tea over, he asked indifferently, this girl is still following you? Yi Li was a little surprised that the arrogant Emo Jingli would actually remember a little girl by her side. He smiled and said, Qing Shuang is not young anymore. She won't be able to follow me for long. Qing Shuang and Ajin's marriage was almost finished. Director Emo was naturally satisfied. Ajin and Qing Shuang did not have any objections. They just had to wait until they were free to hold the wedding. There seemed to be nothing to say and they fell silent for a while. Yi Li was not in a hurry to speak. Emo Jingli did not speak, so she calmly drank her tea. After a long while, Emo Jingli felt a little uncomfortable. He opened his mouth and asked, is Inger with you? Yi Li did not deny it. She nodded and said, she just came to chat with me for a while, then went to rest. Is King Li here to find fourth sister? What did she say to you? Emo Jingli's tone was a little stiff and there was a trace of anger. Yi Li glanced at him inexplicably and said, what else do you want to tell me? Isn't it about King Li's plan to divorce your wife and remarry? I don't want to divorce my wife. Emo Jingli said angrily. Yi Li smiled and nodded saying, I know. King Li just wants to demote his wife to a concubine to make room for Miss Dongfang to be the wife. Emo Jingli looked at her and said, I see that Yi Ying has been demoted to a concubine. Are you not happy? Yi Li was a little confused and asked, why should I be happy that fourth sister has been demoted to a concubine? Could it be that having a younger sister as a princess sounds worse than having a younger sister as a concubine? Back then she stole your position as Princess Li, don't you hate her? Emo Jingli stared at Yi Li and asked in a low voice. Yi Li was taken aback and said with some amusement, could it be that your Highness King Li wants to say that you are standing up for me? Or is King Li planning to use some strange excuse to cover up the fact that you have demoted your wife to a concubine? Emo Jingli did not fly into a rage as usual. He looked at Yi Li and said, if you were Princess Li, even if it was for the sake of the vast expanse 3, I would not marry Dongfang Yu. Cough cough. Yi Li almost choked on her tea. She looked at Emo Jingli in shock. What was this? Back then he had abandoned her like a worn-out shoe. Now he was confessing his love. Back then he had loved her like a treasure. Now he was treating her like a weed? Looking at Emo Jingli's serious expression, Yi Li suddenly felt a little disgusted. You don't believe me? Emo Jingli stared at her. Yi Li shook her head and said, it doesn't matter whether I believe you or not. Prince, please don't say such things in the future. Also, fourth sister has been with Prince for 10 years. He has suffered a lot. Prince, please take pity on her and leave her a place to stay. Emo Jingli said unhappily, what do you mean? I have no intention of abandoning her. Did she tell you that? Yi Li said indifferently, so what if Prince has no intention of abandoning her? Prince is from the imperial family. Don't tell me he has not seen enough of such things. fourth sister has no relatives in Jiangnan. She has no backing. If she is demoted from a princess to a concubine, what kind of life does Prince think she will have? You are so good to her. Emo Jingli gritted his teeth and said. Yi Li speaking up for Yi Ying was not a big deal, but in Emo Jingli's ears, it was very uncomfortable. Yi Li smiled and said, we are both women. Why do you have to make things difficult for women? In this world women do not have it easy. Not everyone has Yi Li's good fortune. Looking at the faint smile on Yi Li's face, Emo Jingli felt even more irritated. He said irritably, I know. I can guarantee that Yi Ying will always be the imperial concubine. But, what benefits will I get? Ren Qining will never be able to marry Dongfang Yu. Does that count as a benefit? Yi Li said indifferently. Emo Jingli's expression changed slightly. He finally nodded and said, it's a deal. Ren Qining claimed to be a descendant of the previous dynasty. Whether he was true or not, it was at least a huge gimmick. At the same time, he was also his greatest enemy. Emo Shuyao gave up Infinite Boundless Mountain for you. Will he really not regret it in the future? Emo Jingli seemed to dislike the smile on Yi Li's face. He asked somewhat maliciously. Yi Li smiled and said, I believe that he will not regret his decision. Emo Shuyao not taking a concubine was indeed because of her. But abandoning Dongfang Yu and Infinite Boundless Mountain was not entirely because of her. Infinite Boundless Mountain was not of help to the Prince Ding mansion in the long run. Instead it was trouble. Emo Jingli snorted coldly and said, what? Emo Shuyao may not regret it now, but one day he will. At that time he will only hate you even more. Are you talking about yourself, Prince Li? Emo Shuyao's voice sounded lazily from behind. Emo Jingli's expression stiffened. Abruptly turning his head, he saw that Emo Shuyao was already 3 steps away from him. Not noticing Emo Jingli's ugly expression in the slightest, Emo Shuyao walked to Yi Li's side and bent down to kiss her. Holding Yi Li's shoulder, he smiled proudly and said, for Miss Li I will never regret it. Chapter 809. For Miss Li I will never regret it. Emo Shuyao stood behind Yi Li looking down at Emo Jingli. Hearing Emo Shuyao's words, Emo Jingli's expression, which had already been ugly, became even more gloomy. Laughing coldly, he said, is that so? Emo Shuyao raised his brows, saying, of course. This prince is not one of those people who have eyes but cannot see. Lazily sitting down on the stool beside Yi Li, Emo Shuyao ignored Emo Jingli's ugly expression, looking at Yi Li with some displeasure, saying, Miss Li, why are you speaking with him alone here? Yi Li raised her brows, looking at him with a smile that was not a smile, asking, could it be that this concubine cannot speak with others alone? Emo Shuyao hurriedly smiled apologetically, saying, how could that be? For Miss Li to be willing to speak with others, that is their honor. However, some people are full of evil intentions and Miss Li cannot afford not to guard against them. Yi Li smiled but did not speak, looking at him calmly with a slight smile. In terms of evil intentions, how many people under the heavens could compare to Prince Ding? Emo Shuyao also did not mind Yi Li's teasing gaze, tilting his head towards Yi Li as he asked, does Prince Li have anything else to say? Even if Emo Jingli originally had something to say, he had already been angered by Emo Shuyao to the point that he had mostly forgotten about it. Snorting lightly, he stood up saying, I have come to bring Ying-er back to the post house. So it is like this. Emo Shuyao nodded, saying, then Prince Li, please do as you wish. That's right. Prince Li, Saint Yun's wife, cannot be abandoned. Although Princess Consort Li cannot be considered as his wife, she has still been with Prince Li for so many years. Now that Prince Li unhesitatingly wants to demote her to a concubine for the sake of a girl from Infinite Boundless Mountain, this will make the world think that Prince Li despises the poor and favors the rich. It's bad for Prince Li's reputation. Emo Jingli gritted his teeth. Prince Ding, you're worrying too much. I don't mean that. Emo Shuyao raised his eyebrows, clearly not believing Emo Jingli's words. Emo Jingli wasn't in the mood to explain. He turned around and left with a sullen face. Looking at Emo Jingli's retreating back, Yi Li smiled at Emo Shuyao and said, Prince came at the right time. Emo Shuyao smiled wholeheartedly and said, I knew that Miss Li didn't want to talk to Emo Jingli either. Yi Li looked up at the sky helplessly. Wasn't she praising him? Miss Li, do you think that Emo Jingli has a high chance of marrying Dongfang Yu? Emo Shuyao asked somewhat curiously. Yi Li frowned slightly, saying, if Emo Jingli doesn't use any tricks, I'm afraid that the chances aren't high. Dong Fengyu wasn't smart, but Dong Fenghui wasn't easy to deal with. With Dong Fenghui watching from the side, Emo Jingli might not be able to get what he wanted. Emo Shuyao said mildly, just now Dong Fenghui sent someone over to pass on a message. Dong Fengyu's marriage can be treated as if it never happened. Infinite Boundless Mountain is still willing to help the Prince Ding mansion. You refused? Yi Li asked without the slightest doubt. Of course I refused. Emo Shuyao nodded, saying, whatever I and the Prince Ding mansion want to do in the future, Infinite Boundless Mountain has no intention of interfering. Dong Fenghui might be smart, but Infinite Boundless Mountain and the Su family were still different from each other. The Su family might not be as powerful as Infinite Boundless Mountain, but the Su family was closer to this world. Over the past few hundred years, they had slowly assimilated into the hearts of the common people of the world. Even if the Su family was destroyed, their figures would forever remain in the annals of history. Infinite Boundless Mountain, however, placed themselves in a position that was far too transcendent. Every time they appeared, they seemed to shock the world, shrouding themselves in a mysterious aura that others could only look up to. However, it was precisely because they were far too detached from the world that they had long since gotten used to the feeling of being high and mighty. Even someone as smart as Dong Fenghui also placed herself in the same position as the majority of the people in the world. Dong Fenghui will be very angry. Dong Fenghui was indeed very scheming and smart. However, she had been the successor of the Infinite Boundless Mountain since birth, and had been the lord of the Infinite Boundless Mountain for decades. In fact, she was even more intolerant of rejection and disobedience than Dong Fengyu. So what if she's angry? Emo Shuyao raised his eyebrows. Yi Li smiled, that's right. So what if she's angry? The Prince Ding mansion had never feared the strength of their enemies. In the Dongfeng mansion where the signboard had just been hung, Dongfeng Hui dismissed the people who had returned from the Prince Ding mansion, her expression somewhat cold. Dongfeng Yu stood in front of her, saying somewhat worriedly, Master Prince Ding? Dongfeng Hui said slowly, Prince Ding has refused. Dongfeng Yu was startled, saying with furrowed brows, if it was because of my disciple before now, we have already stopped asking for the marriage. Why haven't they agreed? Dongfeng Hui laughed coldly, haven't you guessed it as well? The Prince Ding mansion had never planned to cooperate with Infinite Boundless Mountain from the start. Dongfeng Yu frowned, saying, that doesn't make sense. With our help, the Prince Ding mansion will naturally be like a tiger that has grown wings. If they want to deal with the northern territory of the northern tribes and even the western tomb, it will be much easier. Why hasn't Prince Ding agreed? Dongfeng Hui smiled mildly, while you are intelligent, you don't have the intellect and mindset of a leader. This is also what worries Master the most. The Prince Ding mansion's power is already sufficiently strong, and it also has the support of the Su family. If Emo Shiyao's ambition is to conquer the world, he will be able to achieve it sooner or later. While without Infinite Boundless Mountain's power, it may be a little late, but there is no need to worry. Infinite Boundless Mountain's power was coveted, but also feared. If the Prince Ding mansion cooperated with Infinite Boundless Mountain, Emo Shiyao would be worried that he would not be able to get rid of them in the future, and would be held back by Infinite Boundless Mountain. But Emo Shiyao must not forget that without Infinite Boundless Mountain's help, he may be able to achieve his goal. But if our Infinite Boundless Mountain helps others... Dongfeng Hui's expression changed as she said coldly. She could understand Emo Shiyao's thoughts, but she could not accept them. Emo Shiyao had rejected her without hesitation. Apart from his fear of Infinite Boundless Mountain, it was more likely that he didn't think much of Infinite Boundless Mountain at all. Master. Dongfeng Yu was startled, looking somewhat worriedly at Dongfeng Hui. Dongfeng Hui's expression eased a little as she smiled at her. What do you want to say? Dongfeng Yu frowned. Master intends to choose someone else to assist him. But, apart from Lei Jinting, there is probably no one else in the world who is Emo Shiyao's match. But Lei Jinting, from what disciple sees, he should also have no intention of cooperating with Infinite Boundless Mountain. And his age. Lei Jinting was much older than Emo Shiyao. Even if Prince Ding didn't do anything, he would still be able to drag Lei Jinting to death. It just so happened that Lei Jinting's son Lei Tingfeng had always been mediocre. His harvest was sufficient, and it would not be easy for him to dominate the world. Dongfang Hui nodded approvingly. As long as it did not involve the ways of the world, Dongfang Yu's vision and thoughts were extremely clear and accurate. Then what do you think? Dongfang Hui asked. Dongfang Yu looked at her somewhat hesitantly, wanting to say something but hesitating. Seeing this, Dongfang Hui's expression darkened. If you are still thinking about Su Qingchen, I advise you to give up on such thoughts as soon as possible. The people of the Su family, although they look cultured and refined, they are actually cold-hearted and heartless towards outsiders. If you cannot enter their eyes, they will not feel the slightest bit of pity for you. If you go up there, you will only be asking for humiliation. Chapter 8:10. Dongfang Yu looked at her master doubtfully. For some reason she felt that her master's words sounded like she was gnashing her teeth. However, her master had always been calm, rational, and elegant in front of her. Dongfang Yu was stunned for a moment and thought that she was overthinking. Thinking of Su Qingchen's cold rejection and Su Qingyan's sharp sarcasm, Dongfang Yu had to admit that her master was right. But even so, she was unwilling to give up and choose someone else. Not only because she was unwilling to give up to Su Qingchen, but also because compared to Mo Jingli and Ren Qining, she still thought that the Prince Ding mansion was the best. If her master chose someone else, she felt that the probability of failure was very high. It had to be said that because Dongfang Yu didn't understand the ways of the world, her way of looking at things was not easily influenced by emotions. For example, someone as smart as Dongfang Hui would think of supporting others to deal with the Prince Ding mansion in anger after being rejected, to teach Mo Xiao a lesson. However, Dongfang Yu could only not understand the Prince Ding mansion's decision. She would be sad but rarely angry. So she could see clearly that Mo Jingli and the Prince Ding mansion were too far apart. It couldn't be said that there was no selfishness, but her point of view was absolutely correct. Master, I don't like Mo Jingli and Ren Qining. Dongfang Yu frowned. Dongfang Hui smiled lovingly and said, you don't like them and I don't want you to marry them. What are you worried about? Dongfang Yu frowned and said, but if it's Mo Jingli and Ren Qining, they will definitely ask me to marry them. Otherwise they wouldn't believe the sincerity of the infinite boundless mountain. Didn't the previous generations of the infinite boundless mountain do this? If the successor of the infinite boundless mountain doesn't marry them, how can they believe that they are the ones chosen by the infinite boundless mountain? If that's the case, Dongfang Hui hesitated, but didn't say that her master wouldn't force her. She just said, Master will think about it. You go and rest first. Dongfang Yu bit the corner of her lips and asked carefully, Master, if I have a way to make young Master Qingchen marry me? Dongfang Hui obviously didn't believe in her disciple's ability. She raised her eyebrows and said, let's talk about it when you really have the ability. Go and rest first. I have to think about it. A trace of hurt flashed across Dongfang Yu's beautiful face. She could only leave silently. Dongfang Yu turned around and closed the door. She saw her master frowning and deep in thought. A trace of determination flashed across her beautiful face. Madam, the Northern Region King Ren Qining requests an audience. Inside the door, Dongfang Hui seemed to have thought of something. The expression on her face seemed to be both sad and happy. In the end, it turned into faint regret and resentment. At the door, the servant's report woke her up. She calmed down and stood up with a frown. Ren Qining, what is he doing here? The servant outside replied, the Northern Region King said that he wants to see you. Ask him to wait in the hall. Dongfang Hui ordered. Yes. Dongfang Hui tidied up her appearance and went to the front hall. As expected, Ren Qining was already waiting there. Seeing Dongfang Hui come in, he quickly stood up and bowed respectfully. Junior Lin Yuan greets Madame Dongfang. Dongfang Hui raised her eyebrows and looked at Ren Qining with a smile. Lin Yuan? Isn't the Northern Region King's surname Ren? Ren Qining smiled helplessly and said, I'm an orphan of the previous dynasty. I don't dare to walk the world with my real name. I'm ashamed to face my ancestors. In fact, Ren Qining didn't want to revert to his original name. But 2 years ago the timing was not right. First he had to rely on the people of the Northern Region. Although his late queen was a woman of the Northern Region, she was indeed a rare intelligent person. If he changed his name too quickly or even the title of the country, it would only cause her and the nobles of the Northern Region to be dissatisfied. Second, once he really reverted to the name Lin Yuan, whether it was the Prince Ding Mansion, the West Hill or Mo Jingli, They would all be his enemies. After all, the previous dynasty was destroyed because of the Dechu state and the West Hill. At that time he would be the target of public criticism. Dongfang Hui sized him up for a long time, then said indifferently, "The descendants of the previous dynasty have been trying to revive the country for many generations, but all of them failed. It's not bad for you to have achieved what you have today." Ren Qining lowered his eyes and said with a faint smile, "Madam, you flatter me. Lin Yuan has never dared to forget the wishes of my ancestors. Back then, the infinite boundless mountain and our dynasty were related by blood. This junior earnestly asks for Madam's help." Dongfang Hui was silent. Ren Qining understood that she was thinking and wasn't in a hurry to persuade her. He sat calmly to the side waiting for her answer. After a long while, Dongfang Hui said, "Young Master Ren, to be honest, I admire your ability and perseverance. But, if you want to revive the country, I'm afraid it won't be so easy." A trace of emotion flashed through Ren Qining's eyes and he said respectfully, "Please advise me, madam." Dongfang Hui didn't stand on ceremony. After pondering for a while, she said, "First of all, young master only established the country after marrying the princess of the northern region. The current queen is also a woman of the northern region. Other things aside, if young master wants to lead troops to the Central Plains, it will be extremely difficult for you to obtain the recognition of the landowning households of the Central Plains. In addition, I've also heard that the imperial court of the northern region is currently not stable. The endless disputes between the old officials of the previous dynasty and the nobles of the northern region are not something that can be settled overnight. For a young master to already have internal strife while the world is still unsettled, I'm afraid that this is not a good sign. Even if young master really does take over the Central Plains in the future, is it still the northern region or the previous dynasty?" Ren Qining was silent. He couldn't help but admit that every word of Dongfang Hui's hit the nail on the head. It wasn't that he didn't know this, but that he had no choice but to do so at that time. "Madam's meaning is? While infinite boundless mountain has always stayed out of this, we are still people of the Central Plains. We definitely won't do anything to invite outsiders to invade the Central Plains. Please understand, young master," Dongfang Hui said seriously. A trace of sadness flashed across Ren Qining's face. The rise of the northern region and the current imperial court were mostly due to outsiders. Not only was this a weakness that others criticized, it was also the greatest pain in the hearts of Ren Qining and those self-proclaimed old officials of the previous dynasty. Ren Qining clenched his teeth, saying in a low voice, "If this one can guarantee that the future imperial court and royal family will all be people of the Central Plains, would madam be willing to help?" Dongfang Hui lowered her eyes, saying mildly, "If this is really the case, then young master is a legitimate descendant of the previous dynasty. Naturally, it would be a different matter." Ren Qining felt joy in his heart, saying, "Many thanks, madam. I hope that madam will keep her word." Dongfang Hui said, "How could my infinite boundless mountain go back on our word?" Ren Qining nodded his head in satisfaction. Just as he was about to say something, someone hurried in from outside, coming before Ren Qining and whispering a few words in his ear. Ren Qining's expression changed slightly as he stood up and said to Dongfang Hui, "This one has some urgent matters to attend to. Apologies for disturbing, madam. I will take my leave now." Dongfang Hui didn't try to keep him as she got someone to send him out. "Master, are you really planning to help Ren Qining?" Dongfang Yu walked out from inside, frowning slightly as he looked outside. Dongfang Hui snorted lightly, saying, "When did I say that I was going to help him? A descendant of the previous dynasty, whether real or not. Ren Qining owes the princess of the northern region a great debt of gratitude, yet he still didn't hesitate to kill her. Such a person is destined to be harsh and merciless. I'm afraid that the day he obtains the world in the future will be the day when the birds are gone, the bow is cast aside and the dog is cooked." Chapter 8:11. "Then master, just now?" Dongfang Yu asked, puzzled. Dongfang Hui said, "It was just to appease him temporarily. He even brought out the friendship between his ancestors and infinite boundless mountain. I naturally couldn't reject him directly and fall out with him. Moreover, do you think he can deal with the conflicts between the northern territory and the old officials of the previous dynasty in such a short time? I'm afraid his strength will become weaker and weaker." Dongfang Yu's face flashed with a trace of confusion. She didn't understand why Master didn't directly reject Renqining. However, it was a good thing that Master didn't choose Renqining. As for Mo Jingli, she had a way to deal with him. In the guest house where the Northern Tribe's envoys were temporarily staying, after a few days of rest, noble consort Lu's injuries seemed to be better. Yelu Hong and Princess Rong Hua also planned to return to the Northern Tribes. Although Yelu Yi wanted to delay Yelu Hong to stay in Glass City for a few more days so that it would be easier for the royal house of the Northern Tribes to arrange things, he couldn't find a suitable reason to stay in Glass City. He could only invite Yelu Hong to stay in one of the cities where he was stationed in Dechu State for a few days. He originally thought that Yelu Hong wouldn't agree. After all, everyone knew that the brothers liked each other. Even Yelu Yi himself wouldn't go to Yelu Hong's territory alone. He didn't expect that Yelu Hong would only think for a moment before agreeing. The two brothers decided on their itinerary. Before they left, they naturally had to go to the Prince Ding mansion to bid farewell to Yi Li and Mo Shuyao. Yi Li looked at noble consort Lu who was standing beside Yelu Yi and sighed with emotion. Perhaps because her identity was exposed, noble consort Lu didn't wear a veil this time. However, Yi Li would rather she continue wearing a veil. Because whenever she thought about how she maintained her beautiful face, Yi Li couldn't help but feel like vomiting. Prince Yelu and 7th Prince came from afar. If I didn't receive you well, please don't blame me. Mo Shuyao looked at Yelu Hong and Yelu Yi and smiled. Yelu Hong smiled. Prince Ding is too polite, we've disturbed you for too long. I will take my leave today. If Prince Ding and Princess Consort visit the Northern Tribes in the future, I will be the host. Mo Shuyao nodded and said, I and Wang Fei have long admired the scenery of the grasslands. There will definitely be a chance. Yelu Hong understood and smiled. In that case, this humble one will be waiting for Prince and Princess's arrival. Yelu Yi looked suspiciously at the exchange between Mo Shuyao and Yelu Hong. He had a feeling that there was something between the two of them. He had asked noble consort Lu to write a letter to the king of the Northern Tribes to accuse Yelu Hong of colluding with Mo Shuyao of treason. Naturally, it was a false accusation, but now he really did have some doubts. Looking thoughtfully at Yelu Hong, Yelu Yi said, Brother Wang, sister-in-law Wang, it's getting late, we should go. Yelu Hong didn't refute, nodding and saying, 7th brother is right, we really should go. Prince Ding, Princess Consort, we will take our leave now. Yi Li smiled and nodded. Crown Prince, Princess, 7th Prince, have a safe trip. Noble consort Lu, who was sitting next to Yelu Yi, stared at Yi Li and suddenly said, I want to take 2 people with me. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but frown. Yelu Yi gave noble consort Lu a warning glare, but noble consort Lu ignored his gaze and looked at Yi Li saying, I want to take Xiaoyun and Jin Ning away. Yi Li tilted her head and smiled slightly. Miss Qing Yaina, on what grounds do you want to take Prince Chongqing and Princess Jin Ning away? Noble consort Lu's expression changed and she raised her chin, saying, They stabbed me, shouldn't I be the one to deal with them? Yi Li's expression was calm as she said leisurely, Stabbed? This consort thought that you were injured because you tried to assassinate Prince Chongqing and Princess Jin Ning. Since you say so, 7th Prince, Prince Chongqing and Princess Jin Ning also need this consort to give them an explanation. Please leave Miss Qing Yaina behind. You dare. I am the 7th imperial consort of the Northern Tribes. Noble consort Lu said harshly. Yelu Yi frowned and looked at Yi Li saying, Consort, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate. It wasn't that he didn't want to part with noble consort Lu, but the king of the Northern Tribes still needed noble consort Lu to speak for him. Moreover, noble consort Lu was still his future consort on the surface. If she stayed in Glass City like this, it would be a disgrace to him. Yelu Hong suddenly said with a smile, Why does this crown prince remember that 7th sister-in-law passed away a few years ago? When did 7th brother remarry? Ah, that's right. Lord Father said that he would hold a wedding ceremony for 7th brother when he returned to the Northern Tribes. The original 7th imperial consort was also the daughter of a large tribe in the Northern Tribes, but she died a few years ago from illness. Yelu Yi hadn't remarried since then. He didn't expect that he would have such a woman. Yelu Hong had also suffered a few losses because of noble consort Lu in front of the king of the Northern Tribes. Since Princess Ding wanted her to stay, Yelu Hong was naturally happy to help. Yelu Ye's face was gloomy. Looking at noble consort Lu's face, his heart was also wavering. Now that the Northern Tribes army and the Mahist army were in a stalemate, Noble Consort Lu's original use was naturally useless. The only use she had was her influence on the king of the northern tribes. But just as Yelu Hong had said, once he returned to the northern tribes, his father would very likely hold a wedding for him. He had never really thought of marrying Noble Consort Lu as his first consort. He was not even willing to be a concubine. Should he bring Noble Consort Lu back, or take the opportunity to get rid of her? This was a problem. Seeing the deep thought on Yelu Ye's face, Noble Consort Lu couldn't help but panic. Noble Consort Lu knew very well what she would face if she was left in Glass City. She couldn't help but secretly regret her impulsive actions just now. These 2 years she had suffered many injuries. But this time not only did she lose face in front of Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li, more importantly, the person who hurt her was her own daughter. How could she take this lying down? That was why she asked Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li for Princess Jin Ning and Mo Xiaoyan. But she didn't expect that she would lose herself. Meeting Yi Li's calm and smiling eyes, Noble Consort Lu's heart suddenly turned cold. Seeing that Mo Xiuyao didn't seem surprised at all, Noble Consort Lu immediately understood. From the beginning, Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li planned to keep her, regardless of whether she would ask for them or not. "No, I don't want to stay in Glass City," Noble Consort Lu said decisively. "I want to return to the northern tribes. Yelu Yi, take me away." If her tone wasn't so unyielding, Yelu Yi might have considered it. Before Noble Consort Lu finished speaking, Yelu Ye's expression turned cold. He raised his hand and waved her hand away, saying to Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao, "Since she injured the king of Chongqing and Princess Jin Ning, let Prince Ding and Princess Jin Ning deal with her." "No. Yelu Yi, you can't do this to me. Don't forget, if it wasn't for me," Yelu Yi sneered. "Are you going to tell Prince Ding and Princess Ding how you betrayed the country? That's right, it was because of your help that I was able to take the border and several cities of the Dechu state so easily. So what?" He glanced mockingly at the frightened Noble Consort Lu, deeply feeling that he made the right decision. He was the honorable 7th prince of the northern tribes. How could he let the nobles of the northern tribes see him as a joke for this woman? "Prince Ding, Princess Ding, farewell." Ignoring Noble Consort Lu, Yelu Yi turned and left without hesitation. Yelu Hong cupped his hands towards Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao and also left. Princess Ronghua followed behind Yelu Hong, smiling at Yi Li. When she walked past Noble Consort Lu, she stopped and said in a low voice, "Noble Consort Lu, I don't think we'll see each other again. Don't worry, Prince Ding and Princess Ding will definitely take good care of you, this traitorous slut." No, take me with you," Noble Consort Lu cried out in horror. Princess Ronghua sneered, shaking off Noble Consort Lu's hand, and stepped out of the door. Chapter 8:12. Betray the country? In the quiet hall, Mo Xiuyao's voice sounded faintly. Noble Consort Lu, who had been so confident just a moment ago, immediately lost her composure. Even the slim figure in white couldn't help but tremble. She already knew how cold and heartless this man she had once been infatuated with could be. Although Dechu State had nothing to do with the Prince Ding mansion now, if Mo Xiuyao knew what she had done, Noble Consort Lu couldn't help but shiver. She looked at the man in front of her, who seemed to be neither happy nor angry. Although they originally thought that it was too easy for the northern tribes to break into the pass, they didn't suspect Noble Consort Lu. But thinking about it seriously, the Lu family was Mo Jingqi's most trusted minister in the past, and Mo Jingqi had always made no distinction between civil and military officials, appointing officials at will. It wasn't surprising that the Lu family knew a lot about Dechu State's military defenses. Although Mo Jingli had completely abandoned the Lu family before his death, and Mo Jingli had always been on guard against the Lu family, he had never considered setting up defenses. After all, on the surface this had nothing to do with the Lu family. Most importantly, the one who leaked this information to the northern tribes was not anyone else in the Lu family, but Noble Consort Lu, who was the least likely to do it. Looking at the pale woman in white, Yi Li shook her head helplessly and sighed inwardly. Although she hated Noble Consort Lu, Yi Li still remembered the arrogant woman in white who stood beside Mo Jingqi and looked down on her. Who would have thought that Noble Consort Lu, who was once the most favored in the palace, would fall to such a state? Xiuyao. Yi Li thought for a moment. She still felt that it was better to let Mo Xiuyao deal with Noble Consort Lu personally. Noble Consort Lu's ending was sad, but also hateful. Emo Xiuyao smiled and held Yi Li's hands. This matter actually has nothing to do with us now. Send someone to invite Prince Li and Prince Chongqing over. Now, Emo Jingli was the regent of the Dechu state, and noble consort Lu was Emo Xiaoyun's mother. Naturally, she would be handed over to them. He believed that Emo Jingli, who had been fooled by this woman, would definitely give him a satisfactory punishment. Emo Jingli arrived very quickly. A few days ago, Emo Xiuyao had caused him to bleed profusely. When Emo Jingli arrived, he didn't look too good. Beside him were Yi Ying and Princess Xixia, whose expressions were similarly ugly. However, compared to Princess Xixia, Yi Ying's appearance wasn't that bad. Actually, if Emo Jingli married Dong Fengyu, the biggest victim would be Princess Xixia. After all, Yi Ying still had the title of princess consort. After so many years, Princess Xixia still had nothing. He had tried to meet Princess Anqi several times in Glass City, but was rejected by her on the grounds that the queen needed to take care of her baby. If Emo Jingli really married a woman with such a powerful background like Dong Fengyu, where would there be a place for Princess Xixia in the Prince Ding mansion? Following behind Emo Jingli and the other two were Emo Xiaoyun and Princess Jin Ning. Uncle Prince Ding, Princess Consort, what happened? Before Princess Jin Ning could finish speaking, she saw noble consort Lu standing at the side. Her expression couldn't help but change. These days, Princess Jin Ning had taken some medicine from Xinyang to apply. The hideous scars on her face already had some visible effects. Perhaps because she saw hope, Princess Jin Ning's mood improved a lot. Even the gloominess between her brows dissipated a lot. Although she might not be able to fully recover, at least she wouldn't scare people. However, when she saw noble consort Lu, Princess Jin Ning's expression still turned ugly. Not only because of the pain that noble consort Lu caused her, but also because of what Xinyang said at Prince Chongqing's mansion that day. In the past, Princess Jin Ning resented because her mother had hurt her. Now it was complete disgust and disgust. Princess Jin Ning felt that it was no surprise that a woman who was willing to kill her own unborn children for the sake of beauty had almost caused her death back then. Why is she still here? Princess Jin Ning frowned in disgust. Emo Jingli's expression was also ugly. He hadn't forgotten how noble consort Lu had lied to him about the whereabouts of the children. It was just that he couldn't do anything because of Yelu Yi. Now that Yelu Yi had left, this woman was still here. A cold light flashed through Emo Jingli's eyes. He looked at Emo Xiuyao with an unkind expression and said, "You called me here just to see this woman?" Emo Xiuyao raised his brows and calmly repeated Yelu Ye's words. After hearing Emo Xiuyao's words, everyone's expression turned ugly. Not only Emo Jingli and Emo Xiaoyun, but even Princess Xixia and Yi Ying looked at noble consort Lu with shock. Although they were all women, they weren't good people. But to be honest, they had never thought of committing treason. Even though Princess Xixia had followed Emo Jingli for so many years, she had never thought of telling Emo Jingli the secret of Nanzhao's imperial family's survival. Buyunchong. Princess Jin Ning couldn't help but scream. She glared at noble consort Lu viciously as if she had been dipped in poison. This woman was really crazy. Had she never thought of what would happen to the Lu family and her children if the Northern Tribe's army were to be lured into Dechu State? She thought of how she and her brother had felt when Dechu was almost destroyed and how she and her brother had been waiting for death together. So it was her biological mother who had caused all of this. Bitch. Emo Jingli's expression was malicious as he ruthlessly slapped her. This slap was completely merciless. Even though noble consort Lu knew some martial arts compared to other women, she still fell to the ground from this swift slap. Her forehead hit a nearby chair. Noble consort Lu spat out a mouthful of blood and clutched her abdomen in pain. She even spat out a tooth along with the blood. Although many days had passed, the wound from Princess Jin Ning's stab had not completely healed. Now that she had fallen to the ground, the wound on her abdomen burned with pain. A slap was not enough to relieve the anger in Emo Jingli's chest. This woman. The Dechu state had been defeated so badly and had retreated to Jiangnan. It was all because of this woman. Seeing that Emo Xiuyao now occupied this vast land while he could only retreat to Jiangnan, which was less than a quarter of his original land, Emo Jingli wanted to cut noble consort Lu into pieces and grind her bones to dust. Prince Li, Emo Jingli wanted to go forward and kick her a few more times but was stopped by Emo Xiuyao. Emo Jingli looked at him coldly and said mockingly, "Could it be that Prince Ding still wants to save this bitch?" That's right. In the past, this woman was deeply in love with Prince Ding. Emo Shuyao raised his eyebrows and smiled, saying faintly, "Princely misunderstood. I wanted to say, don't dirty eyes floor. Also, don't teach the child bad things." Everyone was stunned and followed Emo Shuyao's gaze. Sure enough, they saw a small head poking out of the door and looking curiously at the situation inside with big round eyes. Yi Li's face darkened, saying faintly, "Yuchen, are you coming or not?" Emo Xiaobao blinked and waved at Yi Li with a smile. "Nyangqin, what are you doing here?" Stepping over the threshold into the hall, everyone saw that there was a string of little radishes behind her. Leng Junhan and Su Jirui also followed behind. Seeing Yi Li's expression, Emo Xiaobao knew that things were not good. Nyangqin was angry. He quickly put on an innocent smile and ran towards Yi Li. A white shadow flashed. Noble consort Lu, who was sitting on the ground, suddenly jumped up and threw herself at Emo Xiaobao. Chapter 8:13. Ah! A pitiful cry rang out in the hall. Noble consort Lu held her right hand as she glared at the person in front of her. There was a deep and heavy cut on her right wrist, fresh blood flowing out without stopping. Emo Xiaobao, who was originally in danger, was held in Yi Li's arms. Yi Li's other hand was still holding a dagger that was dripping with blood. Emo Xiaobao's face was pale from fright. He called out for his mother and then lay in Yi Li's arms, unwilling to move. No matter how smart he was still a child 7 or 8 years old. Not crying from this kind of fright was already considered brave. Yi Li's elegant and gentle face seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. She coldly stared at the woman in front of her, and for the first time, her eyes flashed with murderous intent. Noble consort Lu already understood that in this unfamiliar Li city, if she fell into the hands of Emo Xiuyao and Emo Jingli, only death would await her. When she threw herself at Emo Xiaobao, it could be said that she used all her strength. But she didn't expect that she would still fail at the last moment. Yi Li's dagger didn't show any mercy. Even if she didn't die, Noble consort Lu's right hand would be crippled from now on. Although she often heard people say that the Prince Ding Mansion's martial arts were extraordinary, Noble consort Lu never took it seriously. She didn't really fight with Yi Li and also didn't really see Yi Li fight with others. 10 years ago, Yi Li couldn't even shoot an arrow properly. She didn't expect that her movements would be so nimble and fierce. "Mother." Emo Xiaobao lay in Yi Li's arms and cried out aggrievedly. Lowering her head to look at the child in her arms, Emo Xiaobao grew a lot taller in this year. Yi Li had some difficulty holding him. Seeing her son with red eyes in her arms, Yi Li's heart softened. Putting away the dagger, she carried Emo Xiaobao back to Emo Shuyao's side and placed him in Emo Shuyao's arms. Although Emo Xiaobao had always been at odds with his father, he was very obedient at this time. Sitting in his lord father's embrace, Emo Xiaobao suddenly felt that the shock from before had calmed down. His pale little face also regained some color. Leng Junhan and Su Jirui were also frightened. Although they didn't see clearly what Yi Li and Noble consort Lu did, they saw the blood on the ground and everyone's faces. Yi Li called for people to carry the 2 children away. These 2 children were younger than Emo Xiaobao, and their courage was also greater than Emo Xiaobao's. It was not good to be frightened. Emo Shuyao lowered his head to look at Xiaobao, who was squirming uneasily in his arms. He stiffly patted him to comfort him. His gaze on Noble consort Lu was so gloomy that even Emo Jingli couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Emo Xiaoyun and Princess Jinning, who were standing on the side in shock, couldn't even move. They didn't see how Emo Shuyao made his move. Everyone only felt that 2 shadows flashed in the hall. Emo Shuyao had already sat back down on the chair with Emo Xiaobao in his arms. Noble consort Lu, who was originally leaning on the chair, fell back to the ground again. Her 4 limbs were hanging on the ground in a very strange manner. She couldn't move at all. But just now Yi Li had only slashed Noble consort Lu once, and her screams could be heard even outside. Now after such a huge change she didn't even make a sound. Everyone took a closer look and found that it wasn't that Noble consort Lu didn't scream. It was that her mute acupoint was hit and she couldn't make any sound. There was no need to look at her injuries. Just by looking at Noble consort Lu's ferocious and twisted expression, one could know how much pain she was in. However, no one sympathized with such torture when it was inflicted on such a beautiful woman. Even Emo Xiaoyun and Princess Jinning were just stunned for a moment. Then they turned their heads and didn't dare to look again. Noble consort Lu trembled in pain. But even if she used all her remaining strength, she still couldn't make a sound. She could only look at the people in front of her in horror and look at her indifferently. Once, noble consort Lu thought that the days when she just left the palace were very painful. It was so painful that she never wanted to recall those days. But now she understood that compared to falling into Mo Xiaoyao's hands, she would rather live like that for the rest of her life. Mo Xiaobao sat in Mo Xiaoyao's arms and curiously looked at noble consort Lu, who was writhing on the ground in pain. Because she couldn't move her limbs at all, she was like a worm writhing on the ground. "Father, what's wrong with her?" Mo Xiaoyao carelessly patted his little head and said, "She was just playing on the ground because she had nothing to do." Mo Xiaobao blinked his big eyes. A bright light flashed in his dark eyes. "Does Lord Father think I'm an idiot? This auntie clearly looks like she's in pain. Father was so powerful. He was even more powerful than mother and uncle." Seeing that noble consort Lu was almost out of strength, Mo Xiaoyao snorted and flicked his left hand to release noble consort Lu's mute acupoint. Noble consort Lu groaned in pain. She was already sweating all over and looked very embarrassed. Lying on the ground, she still trembled from the severe pain from time to time. "Mo Xiaoyao, you are so cruel." Mo Xiaoyao glanced at her indifferently. He didn't care about her accusation. She dared to hurt his son, but he still let her live. Mo Xiaoyao was almost touched by his own kindness. "Lili, don't be angry. I will train Mo Xiaobao well in the future." Seeing that Yi Li's face was still a bit cold, Mo Xiaoyao quickly comforted her. He also secretly gave Mo Xiaobao a threatening look. Mo Xiaobao shrank his head and repeatedly nodded. "Mother, Xiaobao will learn powerful martial arts from father in the future. When Xiaobao grows up, I will protect mother." Mo Xiaoyao unhappily gave him a sharp look. "From protecting Lili is I's job." Mo Xiaobao looked at his mother with eager eyes, trying to act cute. Yili reached out and rubbed his little head. She faintly smiled and said, "It's mother who shouldn't have let you in." "Mother, I'm sorry. Xiaobao shouldn't have been playful and eavesdropped outside." Mo Xiaobao obediently admitted his mistake. "Ooh, if he made mother sad, father will definitely punish him." This kind mother and filial son, a loving couple, made the people around them feel very uncomfortable. Mo Jingli coldly glared at Mo Xiaoyao and said, "I didn't come to see your family get along." Mo Xiaoyao didn't care. He raised his eyebrows in a good mood and said, "I's family and King Muli are unhappy?" Mo Jingli lightly snorted. He coldly stared at noble consort Lu and asked, "How does Prince Ding plan to deal with this woman?" Mo Xiaoyao lightly raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, "Since I asked you to invite King Li and King Chongqing over, this woman will naturally be handed over to you to deal with. However, because of what happened just now, I changed my mind." "What does Prince Ding want to do?" Mo Jingli didn't care about Mo Xiaoyao and Princess Jinning, so he naturally didn't plan to discuss with them. He just looked at Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Xiaoyao indifferently glanced at noble consort Lu and said indifferently, "I want her life. I don't care how you want to deal with her, but if anyone dares to let her leave Glass City alive, they will die with her." Mo Jingli understood Mo Xiaoyao's meaning. Mo Xiaoyao didn't want noble consort Lu to die immediately, but he definitely wouldn't allow her to live well. "So if you want to torture noble consort Lu, do as you please. If you want to save her, don't even think about it." Mo Jingli didn't care either. He didn't want to save noble consort Lu. However, torturing her to vent his anger wasn't bad. It just so happened that he had been suppressing a lot of anger in his heart these days. Chapter 8:14. Noble consort Lu looked at the people in the hall in horror, but only saw their cold eyes. "No, don't. Saint Jinning, I was wrong. Save me, I don't want to die." Noble consort Lu looked at Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Jinning pleadingly. Her high and mighty appearance had long been thrown away. In order to survive, she did not mind letting herself fall into the dust. Mo Xiaoyun looked at her silently, unmoved. Princess Jinning slowly stepped forward and squatted in front of noble consort Lu. Noble consort Lu was delighted. She knew that compared to her son who had been taught by her father since young, this daughter had always been much more soft-hearted. Jinning, I was wrong. Save me, I will love you in the future." Princess Jinning raised her hand and slowly pulled the veil away, revealing the twisted scar on her face. Because there was medicine on it, it looked even scarier than before. Noble consort Lu could not help but be startled by the scar on Princess Zhenning's face. Princess Zhenning looked at her calmly and said, "You are not my mother. My mother died 2 years ago. This is the memento that my mother left for me. Do you think I will save you? My brother and my life were saved by others. I can't save you." With that, Princess Zhenning put on her veil again, stood up and turned to leave. No, that has nothing to do with me. To go. Noble consort Lu wanted to reach out and grab Princess Zhenning, but her broken arm was useless. She could not even move it, let alone grab her. She could only watch as Princess Zhenning pulled Mo Xiaoyan out of the door. "No, Zhenning, come back." Princess Zhenning's footsteps paused at the door and she pulled Mo Xiaoyan out of the door. The last glimmer of light in Noble consort Lu's eyes finally disappeared. She looked at the empty door in despair and could not help but scream, "Mo Ning. Mo Xiaoyan, you two unfilial sons. Why didn't I kill you back then? I will haunt you even as a ghost, you unfilial sons." Outside the door, the siblings stopped when they heard the curses filled with hatred coming from inside. The veil covering Princess Zhenning's face was also wet. Mo Xiaoyan lowered his head and held her hand. Princess Zhenning took a deep breath and said, "Let's go home." Mo Xiaoyan nodded and said, "All right, big sister, let's go home." In the hall, noble concubine Lu was still cursing. Mo Xiuyao raised the corner of his mouth slightly. He waved his hand and a cold light flashed. Noble concubine Lu's sharp voice stopped abruptly. A streak of blood seeped out from noble consort Lu's mute acupoint. Apparently, Mo Xiuyao had directly injured her mute acupoint. From now on, noble consort Lu could no longer make any sound. Mo Xiuyao ignored noble consort Lu's venomous eyes. He looked at Mo Jingli and said, "You can take her away now." Mo Jingli looked at Mo Xiuyao with a complicated expression. "You are indeed cruel." Noble consort Lu's limbs were broken and she was mute again. Even if such a person was still alive, he wouldn't be able to cause any big waves. The longer he lived, the more painful it would be. Mo Xiuyao smiled indifferently, "I can also give her a quick death now." "There's no need," Mo Jingli said coldly. He called for the guards waiting outside to take noble consort Lu away. He glanced at Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li and said, "I hope you will keep your promise." He obviously knew that Ren Qining had visited Dongfang Hui, but the Prince Ding mansion didn't do anything. He couldn't help but worry. Mo Xiuyao thought of a piece of news he just heard last night. He smiled and said, "Jingli, there's a good saying. If you rely on a mountain, the mountain will collapse. If you rely on a tree, the tree will collapse. Instead of pinning your hopes on others, it's better to rely on yourself." "You want to break the promise?" Mo Xiuyao frowned and said gloomily. Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "Li Wang misunderstood, but even if we stop Ren Qining, it doesn't mean the winner will be Li Wang. Does Li Wang understand?" Talking to Yi Li about this kind of thing always made Mo Jingli unhappy. He said in a bad mood, "As long as you keep your promise, you don't have to worry about anything else." Yi Li nodded indifferently and said, "Since it's like this, Li Wang can rest assured." Mo Jingli snorted and ignored Yi Ying and Princess Xixia, who were listening with a blank face. He turned and walked out. Princess Xixia and Yi Ying could only follow in a hurry. There was only the family of 3 left in the hall. Yi Li turned around and stared at Mo Xiaobao. Mo Xiaobao's little face tightened and he squeezed out a pitiful smile. Mo Xiuyao raised an eyebrow and casually took Mo Xiaobao out of his arms and threw him to the side. 7 or 8 years old and he still wanted to be held. What a scandal. "Mother," Yi Li looked at him indifferently, "why are you here today?" Mo Xiaobao pouted, "Isn't this Xiaobao's home?" Mother saying this makes Xiaobao sad. "Don't pretend to cry, you don't even have half a drop of tear." Yi Li bluntly exposed his trick. Mo Xiaobao could only put down his little hand that was covering his eyes. Sure enough, it was dry and there wasn't even a trace of red. Mo Xiaobao carefully took 2 steps forward and said with a calm face, "Mother, is Xiaobao wrong?" "What's wrong?" Yi Li asked. Mo Xiaobao seriously counted with his little fingers and said, "Xiaobao shouldn't have not gone to the academy to study. I shouldn't have brought Ling Xiaodai and Jirui to play. I shouldn't have eavesdropped on mother and father's conversation. I shouldn't have." He really couldn't think of anything else that he shouldn't have done. But seeing that mother didn't seem to have any news, Mo Xiaobao could only secretly ask father for help. Emo Shuyao looked amusedly at the kid who was always at odds with him. He blinked his eyes and said with rare kindness, "All right, Lili. This kid needs to be taught a lesson. In the future I will teach him a good lesson. Don't be angry and hurt your body." Looking at her son looking at her, how can Yili still be angry? Rather than being angry at Emo Xiaobao, it's better to say that she is angry at herself. If she didn't call Emo Xiaobao in just now, Emo Xiaobao wouldn't have been almost hurt by noble consort Lu. However, daring to be lazy and not go to the academy, this kind of practice can't be allowed to continue. Yesterday what Taigong taught you copy 20 times. Tomorrow send it to Taigong for review. In addition, add a letter of self-criticism, understand? Emo Xiaobao listlessly drooped his head. Originally, only father liked to punish him by copying. Now there is mother. Wu Taigong Xiaobao was wrong. Chapter 8:15. No one paid attention to how Emo Jingli would deal with noble consort Lu. Perhaps Emo Xiaoyun and Princess Jinning would pay some attention, but they would not do anything for this woman they once called their mother. Noble consort Lu's actions had exceeded the limits of what they had been taught since they were young. Moreover, for the sake of their hard-won peaceful lives, they would not do anything for this woman. It was not until many days later when Emo Jingli left Glass City and returned to Jiangnan that someone discovered a heavily injured corpse in the outskirts of Glass City. In the end, Emo Xiaoyun and Princess Jinning buried her outside the city without a tombstone. Yili only smiled faintly after hearing her subordinate's report and did not pay any more attention to it. On the day Emo Jingli took noble consort Lu away, Enchanting personally came to bid farewell to Yili and Emo Shuyao and returned to his residence. Since Enchanting had already left, there was no point for the Emperor of Shiling's envoy to stay. He also left the next day and returned to Xiling. In the entire Glass City, only Princess Anqi, Emo Jingli and Ren Qining were left. Princess Anqi was pregnant and it was not easy for her to come to Glass City personally. Moreover, the neighboring Dechu State and Xiling Kingdom were busy competing with each other. Nanzhao was remote and there were no major issues, so Princess Anqi was not in a hurry to leave. As for Ren Qining and Emo Jingli, they were more diligent in coming to Dongfang Mansion than to the Prince Ding Mansion when they had nothing to do. Their intentions were obvious. Su Mansion young Master Qingchen, who had been busy for a few months, pushed all the political affairs to Emo Shuyao and finally had the time to rest and read at home. Although young Master Qingchen was extremely intelligent, Emo Shuyao and Yili had been busy fighting outside for more than a year. After that, Yili was pregnant and most of the political affairs in the Prince Ding Mansion were on young Master Qingchen's shoulders. It was impossible to say that he was not tired. After all, young Master Qingchen was not a person who liked power. In the past few days she had sent off most of the important guests. Now that she finally had some free time, Su Qingchen unhesitatingly pushed all the work to Mo Shuyao and stayed at home to read and play the Phoenix Zither that she had just obtained. Mo Shuyao knew that Su Qingchen had been working very hard for the past 2 years. Thinking about how he might need to rely on young Master Qingchen in the future, he naturally couldn't offend him. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to take over all the political affairs and give young Master Qingchen a vacation. The jade-white Phoenix Zither seemed to carry a faint ink fragrance as it flowed with ethereal and leisurely music, making the originally tranquil courtyard even more serene. Even the people in the mansion outside the courtyard couldn't help but feel comfortable and at ease when they heard the sound of the zither. It was as if the worries in their hearts had suddenly disappeared without a trace. Young Master Qingchen's zither sounds really nice. On the other side of the courtyard, Qin Zheng was entertaining Murong Ting and Hua Tianxiang for tea. Hearing the sound of the zither coming from outside the courtyard, Murong Ting couldn't help but sigh. Although Murong Ting was not good at the zither, Qin Zheng and Hua Tianxiang were quite accomplished. Hua Tianxiang smiled and said, "After listening to young Master Qingchen play the zither, I'm afraid I won't dare to embarrass myself in front of others in the future." Although they were quite confident in their zither skills, when they really heard young Master Qingchen's music, they realized the difference and distance between them. Qin Zheng nodded and said with a smile, "Young Master Feng San is known as the zither master. I've also heard his music. I'm afraid it's slightly inferior to Big Brother's." Hua Tianxiang said, "Young Master Feng San is devoted to the zither. Sometimes it's unavoidable that it's too sad. It's not as relaxing and intoxicating as young Master Qingchen." Murong Ting waved her hand and said, I don't quite understand what you're talking about. Anyway, young Master Qingshen's zither sounds nice. Jinger, you're so lucky. You can often listen to his music. Qin Zheng smiled helplessly and said, It's also my first time hearing Big Brother play the zither. These few years, Big Brother has been so busy that even Mother can't find him. Where would he find the time to play the zither? Murong Ting blinked and said in a low voice, I heard that Prince Ding and Princess Li gave the phoenix zither that Mo Jingli just sent to young Master Qingshen. Young Master Qingshen must be playing the phoenix zither now. Qin Zheng said curiously, Murong Ting, do you want to see the phoenix zither? The zither is in Big Brother's hands. I'm afraid it's not convenient for us to go over. But later we can ask Qing Zhe to borrow it from Big Brother to feast our eyes. Murong Ting shook her head and sighed, I don't know how to play the zither. Actually, I want to see the incineration sword. Thinking that one of the 4 national treasures of Dechu State, the #1 sword in the world, the incineration sword, was in the Ding King's residence, but she had no chance to see it, Murong Ting felt extremely worried and listless. Qin Zheng and Hua Tianxiang rolled their eyes helplessly. They knew it would be like this. Somewhere in Su Qingshen's courtyard, a beautiful woman dressed in white stood on the treetops. She stared blankly at the man dressed in white sitting on the ground in the courtyard and playing the zither with a leisurely expression. Her beautiful eyes flowed with appreciation, admiration, adoration, entanglement, pain and other complex emotions. Originally, she wanted to directly enter the courtyard to look for him. She didn't expect to hear such beautiful zither music as soon as she entered the residence. She couldn't help but follow the sound of the zither and saw the man dressed in white standing under the tree like an immortal. Her originally confident heart suddenly seemed to have been hit by something. What followed was indeed more uncertainty and panic. Such a man, could she really have him? But just thinking of that small possibility, her heart immediately filled with infinite joy and satisfaction. At this moment she even felt that her identity, her mission, and her position were no longer important as long as she could be with him. At the end of the song, Su Qingshen stopped and leaned against the tree, enjoying this rare moment of leisure. Young Master Qingshen. The woman in white floated to the ground and looked at him with eyes as gentle as water. Su Qingshen frowned slightly and looked at the woman in white in front of him calmly. He said indifferently, Miss Dongfang, it's rude to come uninvited. Dongfang Yu's eyes darkened and said in a low voice, I have something to discuss with young Master Qingshen. Please forgive me for my rudeness. Su Qingshen carefully put the phoenix zither into the zither case. He stood up and looked at Dongfang Yu saying, These days, everything in the city has been handed over to Prince Ding. If Miss Dongfang has anything to say, you should go to the Prince Ding mansion. Dongfang Yu hurriedly shook her head and said, No, I have nothing to do with the boundless mountain. I just have something to say to young master in private. Su Qingshen frowned and said, I don't seem to have any friendship with you. There shouldn't be anything private to say. Miss Dongfang, please go back. After saying that, he picked up the zither case and prepared to enter the house. No, young Master Qingshen. Seeing that Su Qingshen was about to leave, Dongfang Yu hurriedly called out. Young Master Qingshen. In a hurry, she actually used her lightness technique and floated in front of Su Qingshen. Dongfang Yu's martial arts were praised by Mo Xiuyao, which was enough to prove that she was really good. And Su Qingshen just happened to be a weak scholar who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. The disparity in strength was obvious. Since Dongfang Yu insisted on blocking Su Qingshen naturally couldn't leave. What is the meaning of this, Miss Dongfang? Su Qingshen's handsome face darkened. Chapter 8:16. Young Master Qingshen. You won't even look at me? Dongfang Yu looked at the man in front of her with some grievance. Although she had not interacted with many people since she was young, she knew that she was outstanding and beautiful just by looking at the people around her and the mesmerized gazes of many people after she left the mountain. But why was young Master Qingshen not even willing to look at her? Su Qingshen frowned and did not speak. Dongfang Yu murmured softly, Young Master Qingshen, can you look at me? Su Qingshen's handsome brows furrowed even tighter. Dongfang Yu's voice was low and gentle, but it made him feel very uncomfortable. It was as if something was about to break out of his mind, and his gaze involuntarily wanted to look at Dongfang Yu. However, Su Qingshen was no ordinary person. After a flash of confusion in her eyes, she regained her composure. He looked at the woman in white in front of him calmly. Her face, which was not very beautiful, seemed to become extremely lively and beautiful in an instant. It was as if in that moment, all the colors faded away, leaving only the woman in front of him alive and beautiful. Young Master Qingshan, am I not beautiful? Can you look at me? Dongfeng looked deeply at Su Qingshan and murmured softly. Su Qingshan stared at Dongfeng and did not speak for a long time. Dongfeng saw that he was staring at her without moving and was delighted. She took a step forward and the smile on her face became even more gentle. Young Master Qingshan, am I beautiful? Are very beautiful. Dongfeng was overjoyed and stepped forward again, until she was one step away from Su Qingshan. A faint color appeared between her eyebrows, making her look even more charming. Young Master, Miss Dongfeng, what do you want to say? Su Qingshan's voice sounded faintly and calmly. Pfft. Hearing Su Qingshan's voice, Dongfeng eyes suddenly widened, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Su Qingshan took a step to the side and just happened to avoid the blood that she spat out. In an instant the charm on Dongfeng's face disappeared, and she looked even more embarrassed and weak. The secret art of bewitching people was a double-edged sword. If you could control people, you could naturally do whatever you wanted and make them obsessed and even obedient. However, if the opponent's mind was firm and unaffected, then the one who would be injured would be the caster himself. Dongfeng was interrupted by Su Qingshan's sudden voice at the most critical moment, and suffered instead. For a moment his complexion turned gloomy, and his internal qi became even more rampant. It was obvious that his internal injuries were not light. Master Qingshan. Dongfeng stared at the man in white in shock. He could not believe that he had failed. That day at the banquet she had only used a little bit of it, but it had shaken the minds of many of the high-ranking officials present. She had not expected that she would fail on a man who did not know any martial arts, especially when she had already used the most profound secret technique she could use. At this point, even if an ordinary man had killed his father, he would completely forget to submit to her secret technique. Did this man really hate her that much? Su Qingshan glanced at the woman in white with displeasure and said indifferently, "Unorthodox methods. Miss, please conduct yourself with dignity." On the night of Mr. Qingyun's birthday banquet, Su Qingshan had already seen Dongfeng's unique and strange attraction to men. However, he did not feel this way after meeting her a few times. Even if he did not know that the infinite boundless mountain had such a unique secret technique, Su Qingshan should have felt that something was wrong. How could he have fallen into her trap? At this moment Su Qingshan was not unlucky. The one who was unlucky was Dongfeng. This kind of secret technique to charm and control people's minds was harder to practice than martial arts. Dongfeng could be considered to be very talented to have such an achievement. Even her master Dongfeng Hui could not compare to her in this aspect. However, at the same time the price of failure was also very high. Her face, which had turned gray from spitting out a mouthful of blood, gradually began to turn red. Her watery eyes, which had been filled with hidden bitterness, were gradually covered with a layer of mist. Master Qingshan. Su Qingshan frowned and looked up at a certain spot on the courtyard wall. He said indifferently, "Still not coming out?" As soon as he finished speaking, two men in black jumped down from the wall and bowed respectfully to Su Qingshan. "Greetings, Master Qingshan." Su Qingshan looked at them with a half-smile and said, "Is this how Miss Li asked you to protect me?" It was one thing for the dignified Su mansion to be unguarded. However, it had been so long and the guards who were in charge of protecting Master Qingshan had not discovered it. That was too fake. The two guards looked at each other and said somewhat shamefully, "The prince said that as long as it does not endanger Master's safety, it is best not to ruin Master's luck with women." So it was not that they were not dutiful. It was the prince himself who wanted to see Master Qingshan make a fool of himself. Of course, if Master Qingshan had really fallen into Dongfeng's trap, they would still have intervened. Su Qingshan already knew what kind of person Mo Xiuyao was and could not blame them. He glanced at Dongfeng, who had already fallen to the ground and was moaning intermittently, and asked, "What happened to her?" One of them stepped forward to take a look. He coughed awkwardly and said, "This probably. Just now, Miss Dongfeng used some kind of seduction technique that can seduce men and arouse their desires. Master Qingshan broke her seduction technique, and she suffered internal injuries. Then this internal injury backfired and she. Master Qingchen did not know martial arts. He frowned and looked at Dongfang Yu. Is she seriously injured? The guard lowered his voice and said, she found a man, and it is not serious. Master Qingchen's handsome face stiffened. He lowered his eyes and thought for a while, then said, send her back to Lady Dongfang. Since it was not their responsibility, they did not need to care. As for how Dongfang Hui was going to treat Dongfang Yu, it was none of their business. They did not know any seduction techniques. Hearing Su Qingchen's order, a guard stepped forward and lifted Dongfang Yu off the wall. In the process, Dongfang Yu, who was not in a clear state of mind, took advantage of him several times. In the quiet courtyard, Su Qingchen sat under a big tree with a zither in hand, deep in thought. Not far away, a guard in black stood in the corner, looking at the sky in a daze. After a while, there was a burst of noise outside the courtyard. The guard in black jumped up the wall to take a look, then rushed back to report, Master, Madam and Lady Dongfang are here. Su Qingchen glanced at him lightly and said, stop them first. Let them in after a quarter of an hour. Although the guard did not understand the purpose of Master Qingchen's order, he still obeyed and did as he was told. Under the big tree, Master Qingchen, who was caressing the zither case, had a trace of coldness in his handsome eyes. Sure enough, the guards were very obedient. Just as Su Qingchen stood up and was about to go out, Dongfang Hui had already rushed in with Su Hongyu and Madame Su. Su Qingchen said lightly, Father, Mother, Lady Dongfang, why are you here? Because he did not have to go out today. Su Qingchen was dressed very casually. In the eyes of the people who just came in, this casual look was somewhat strange and inappropriate. Dongfang Hui's expression changed slightly. He stared at Su Qingchen and said, what did you do to Yuger? Chapter 8:17. Before Su Qingchen could say anything, Madame Su was displeased. She glanced at Dongfang Hui unhappily and her face darkened. What did she mean by what did she do to Dongfang Yu? What could her son do to Dongfang Yu? She was afraid that Dongfang Yu would do something to Qingchen. She walked up to Su Qingchen and looked him up and down. Then she asked, Qingchen, did Miss Dongfang come here? Su Qingchen was startled and nodded. Miss Dongfang came here an hour ago. Madame Su was shocked. She grabbed Su Qingchen and asked, are you okay? This time it was Dongfang Hui's turn to be unhappy. Although Dongfang Yu wanted to do something to Su Qingchen, Madame Su's words made her feel uncomfortable. Just knowing Dongfang Yu's plan, Dongfang Hui wanted to strangle her disciple for the first time in her life. Dongfang Hui was not proficient in the art of enchantment. Although it was the secret art of the boundless mountain, Dongfang Hui did not think highly of it. When she was young, she only dabbled in it a little and then gave it up. The prerequisite for the success of this art of enchantment was that the man's mind was not firm enough. But how could Dongfang Hui fall in love with a man who was not firm enough and use this kind of trick to enchant him? So this kind of thing was of no use to Dongfang Hui. When she knew that Dongfang Yu was going to use the art of enchantment to deal with Su Qingchen, Dongfang Hui wanted to cut open Dongfang Yu's head to see what was inside. How could Su Qingchen be controlled by the art of enchantment? He looked gentle, but he was cold-hearted. Dongfang Hui believed that Emo Shuyao was controlled by the art of enchantment. She did not believe that Su Qingchen was controlled by the art of enchantment. She was afraid that something would happen to Dongfang Yu. She put down her work and rushed over. Only then did she know that Dongfang Yu had been here for more than an hour and had not come out. For a moment, Dongfang Hui was not sure whether Su Qingchen had been enchanted or not. So she tried to test Su Qingchen but was stopped by Madame Su. Master Su, my disciple has come to visit you. We haven't talked for a long time. Do you know where she has gone? Dongfang Hui asked in a low voice. This. Su Qingchen pondered for a moment and looked at the three of them hesitantly. Madame Su's heart sank when she saw his troubled expression. She was afraid that her son had really fallen into Dongfang Yu's trap. Su Hongyu frowned slightly and asked, did Miss Dongfang leave? When did she leave? Why is she looking for you? Why didn't I see Miss Dongfang at the gatehouse? No matter how noble Su Hongyu was, he was biased towards his own family. Naturally, he did not want his son to marry a woman like Dongfang Yu. As soon as he opened his mouth, he asked why Miss Dongfang didn't go through the front door when she came to visit. With this clause, even if Su Qingchen and Dongfang Yu really had something going on, the Su family could reject the marriage and let Dongfang Yu marry into the family. Who would want to marry a woman who didn't go through the front door to visit a stranger? Hearing Su Hongyu's words, Dongfang Hui's face turned gloomy. Unfortunately, they were in the wrong, so there was nothing they could say. Su Qingshan calmly looked at the three people with different expressions and said lightly, Miss Dongfang did come to visit, but she seemed to be unwell because of a sudden illness. I asked someone to send her out just now. When? Dongfang Hui asked anxiously. Su Qingshan thought for a moment and said, about half an hour ago. What happened to her? Dongfang Hui cursed in his heart. Su Qingshan said, I don't quite understand. Miss Dongfang suddenly vomited blood and did not look well. I think she might have suffered an internal injury when she jumped off the wall. Dongfang Hui secretly gritted his teeth. With Dongfang Yu's martial arts, she might not have suffered an internal injury even if she jumped off a cliff. Where did they leave from? Why didn't anyone see them from outside? Su Qingshan said calmly, because Miss Dongfang came over the wall. The guard probably thought that Miss Dongfang did not want anyone to know that she was here, so he also left from the top of the wall. Young master. A person landed on the top of the wall. It was the guard in black who had carried Dongfang Yu out. The innocent guard who had just been taken advantage of had a slight blush on his face. When he saw that there was a group of people in the courtyard, he could not help but be stunned. First sir, first madam. Where is Yuger? Dongfang Hui asked sternly. The guard was startled. When he reacted, he said, I sent Miss Dongfang out. Sent her back to the post house so quickly? Unless they used Qinggong, it was impossible to go back and forth from the Su residence to the Dongfang residence in such a short time. But no one would use Qinggong to take a girl out in broad daylight. The guard shook his head. I met Prince Li outside. He said that he was going to visit Madam at the Dongfang residence, so he sent Miss Dongfang back. You handed Yuger to Mo Jingli? Dongfang Hui said sternly. The guard in black felt wronged. It was Miss Dongfang who agreed to let Prince Li send her back. Did they have to send Miss Dongfang back? Even if they sent her back, she would not be sent back to Madame Dongfang. It would be too late for Madame Dongfang to think of a way to save Miss Dongfang. Madame Su did not care what happened to Dongfang Yu as long as her son was fine. She would rather Qingchen not marry a wife in this life than marry that Dongfang Yu. Madame Su smiled and tidied her son's clothes. She scolded, You child, why didn't you change your clothes before coming out when there were guests? I know I was wrong. Su Qingshan did not refute but smiled faintly. Dongfang Hui was not in the mood to see their mother-son relationship. She cupped her hands to Su Hongyu with a cold face. Brother Su, goodbye. Su Hongyu nodded faintly. I won't see you out. After sending Dongfang Hui away, Su Hongyu looked at Su Qingshan thoughtfully. He asked, Did Mo Jingli happen to meet Dongfang Yu, or did Dongfang Yu happen to meet Mo Jingli? Su Qingshan smiled faintly. Father, what's the difference? Su Hongyu thought for a while and said faintly, Don't you understand what the difference is? Dongfang Yu. Su Qingshan smiled. Dongfang Yu did not lose her mind. Even if something happened to her, it has nothing to do with the Su family and the Prince Ding mansion. Looking at his son's calm appearance, Su Hongyu nodded with satisfaction. Well done. Dongfang Yu dared to plot against the Su family. She deserved whatever happened to her. The people of the Su family had never been soft-hearted and kind enough to repay evil with good. Chapter 8:18. Dongfang Hui rushed to the inn where Mo Jingli was staying, but she did not see Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu. She could not help but look even worse. She left the inn and went to Dongfang Mansion. This time she was not alone. Unfortunately, the scene she saw when she entered almost made Dongfang Hui vomit blood. In Dongfang Yu's room, she saw the messy clothes on the floor as soon as she entered. Dongfang Hui's face darkened. She waved away the servants behind her and walked in. Sure enough, she saw a man and a woman lying on the bed. The woman's face was red and her eyes were closed. Obviously, she was still in a deep sleep. There was also a strong musky smell in the room, reminding Dongfang Hui of what had just happened. Mo Jingli. Dongfang Hui gritted her teeth. When Dongfang Hui entered, Mo Jingli opened his eyes. Seeing Dongfang Hui's expression, he was not afraid. He sat up and said calmly, Madame Dongfang, could you please leave for a moment? Dongfang Hui's face was as cold as ice. She waved her sleeve and said hatefully, Prince Li better give me a reasonable explanation. While they were talking, Dongfang Yu gradually woke up. She was stunned when she saw her master's angry expression. She then realized that she was lying in Emo Jingli's arms and screamed. Dongfang Hui said coldly, "Shut up. You still have the nerve to scream. Come out immediately when you're done." After that she turned and left. Dongfang Yu was completely dumbfounded by this sudden turn of events. Her head was in a mess and she could not remember what happened after she failed to bewitch Su Qingchen. But she knew what had happened to her just by looking at the situation in front of her. "Emo Jingli, how dare you? I'm going to kill you!" Dongfang Yu shouted. She did not care that the two were still on the bed. She waved her hand and slapped Emo Jingli's head. Emo Jingli's martial arts might not be as good as Dongfang Yu's, but Dongfang Yu's internal injuries had not healed and she had just experienced such a thing. He was powerless. Emo Jingli raised his hand and grabbed her wrist, holding her tightly in his arms. "Emo Jingli, I'll kill you. I will definitely kill you." Dongfang Yu's eyes were red with anger. She really couldn't understand why her well-planned plan had turned out like this. Not only had she failed to bewitch Su Qingchen, but she had also been taken advantage of by Emo Jingli. She also knew that she had completely lost the chance to make Su Qingchen accept her. The Su family had a century-old scholarly reputation. How could Su Qingchen, the first young master in the world, marry a withered woman? As soon as he thought of this, Dongfang Yu wanted to tear Emo Jingli into pieces and eat his flesh. Emo Jingli held Dongfang Yu's hands tightly and said unhappily, "Have you had enough?" Originally he had intended to treat Dongfang Yu well. After all, Dongfang Yu's status and ability were not bad. More importantly, obtaining her would mean obtaining the support of Infinite Boundless Mountain. As long as Dongfang Yu was obedient, he would naturally treat her well. However, he didn't expect that the moment this woman woke up, she would shout at him and curse him. Had this woman forgotten that she was already his woman? So what if she made a fuss? "You're making a fuss now? You shouldn't have stuck to I before." Emo Jingli laughed coldly and said mockingly. The fragmented and intermittent scenes in her mind made Dongfang Yu's expression extremely ugly. Hearing Emo Jingli's words, she was so angry that her entire body trembled. Emo Jingli was right. She had stuck to Emo Jingli of her own accord from the start. Even if it wasn't her true wish, it couldn't change this fact. Seeing that she was no longer making a fuss, Emo Jingli then let go of her and got off the bed. He took his clothes from the side and calmly put them on. As he bent over to look at Dongfang Yu, he said, "Since things have come to this, as long as you are obedient, I will naturally treat you well. As for young Master Qingchen, who you've been longing for, he clearly knew that you were suffering from an internal injury as if you had been drugged with an aphrodisiac. Didn't he still throw you out without hesitation? Don't tell me you still miss him?" Slap. Dongfang Yu slapped Emo Jingli hard across the face. "Bastard." Emo Jingli's eyes turned cold, but he quickly suppressed his monstrous anger. He stood up and looked at her. "Since you're awake, get up quickly. Your master is waiting outside. I won't marry you." Dongfang Yu stared at him hatefully and said through gritted teeth. Emo Jingli didn't care. "Now who else wants you besides me?" Outside in the hall of the Dongfang mansion, Dongfang Hui had already dismissed all the attendants. She sat alone and listened, frowning as she pondered. Her face, which still had the wind and clouds, was full of malice. This move by the Su family was really too ruthless. It also really cut off the last glimmer of hope that Dongfang Hui had for the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family. Although Su Qingchen said it as if it was completely an accident, Dongfang Hui wouldn't believe that it was so simple. Dongfang Yu's technique failed and she suffered from internal injuries. Su Qingchen got someone to send her back, but just happened to bump into Emo Jingli. Then, Emo Jingli naturally became the person to treat Dongfang Yu's injuries. Everything seemed normal, but her senses and intuition, which had been in charge of Infinite Boundless Mountain for decades, told her that this was definitely not a coincidence. Actually, after Dongfang Hui had rejected Ren Qining in her heart, there weren't many choices left for Infinite Boundless Mountain. Either everyone returned to Infinite Boundless Mountain to hide from the world, or they could only choose Emo Jingli. But choosing on her own and being forced to choose like this were two completely different feelings and results. This feeling of being calculated and coerced not only made Dongfang Hui hate her disciple for not knowing her limits, but also Emo Jingli for taking advantage of the situation. She even hated Su Qingchen for being heartless and scheming against Dongfang Yu. Thinking deeper, this was the Prince Ding mansion's disdain and contempt for infinite boundless mountain. Madame Princess Ding and the second madam of the Su family have come to visit. The attendant outside hurriedly reported. Dongfang Hui frowned. Yi Li choosing to visit at this time was really a little too much of a coincidence. Thinking for a while, Dongfang Hui asked, "Did Princess Ding say why she came?" The attendant said, "Princess Ding said that she heard that Miss Dongfang's body was not in good health, and specially came to visit with the second madam of the Su family." At this time, Dongfang Hui didn't want to tell Yi Li, but the one who came with Yi Li was the second madam of the Su family. This made Dongfang Hui suspect that Yi Li already knew the truth of the matter. After a moment of silence, she sighed somewhat dejectedly, "Since it's already like this, forget it. Invite Princess Ding in." Not long after, Yi Li and Qin Jing walked in hand. Looking at Dongfang Hui's unhappy face, Yi Li acted as if she didn't see it. She said with a smile, "Yi Li is presumptuous to visit. Please forgive me, Madame Dongfang." Dongfang Hui's gaze paused on Qin Jing for a while and then she said, "Princess, you're too serious. It's an honor for you and the second madam to come." Qin Jing actually didn't know much. She only heard a few words about Dongfang Yu's actions from the eldest madam of the Su family. And during this period of time, Dongfang Yu pestered Su Qingchen. Qin Jing also heard about it. Even so, she didn't expect Dongfang Yu to have the guts to break into the Su family and scheme against Su Qingchen. Even though Qin Jing usually came into contact with women with different personalities like Yi Li and Murong Ting, and heard a lot of strange things, she was still frightened by Dongfang Yu's actions. Not to mention that Su Qingchen was her uncle. Just the name of young Master Qingchen was enough to make all the young ladies of the Dechu state admire him. Su Qingchen was also known as the immortal young master. It could be imagined that a woman who was worthy of him would not be an ordinary woman. For someone like Dongfang Yu, not to mention Su Qingchen himself and the Su family, even the young ladies of Li City would not be convinced. Chapter 8-19. Miss Dongfang came to visit the Su mansion, but Qin Jing couldn't receive her personally. She even let Miss Dongfang leave the mansion with illness. Mother-in-law has already reprimanded Qin Jing. "Our Su family is not a good host. Please forgive us, Mrs. Dongfang. I don't know how Miss Dongfang is. Please let Qin Jing see Miss Dongfang so that I can apologize to her face to face." Qin Jing looked at Dongfang Hui and said apologetically. Her words were polite, but it didn't sound polite. Dongfang Yu, a girl, should naturally be received by the youngest lady of the Su family, the second madam. But no one in the Su family had seen Dongfang Yu. How did Miss Dongfang come to the Su mansion? Why did she go to the Su mansion? Since you don't want to go through the front door and follow the etiquette of a guest, then if something happened to Dongfang Yu, naturally it wouldn't be the Su family's business. What's more, Dongfang Yu didn't have an accident in the Su family. The Su family sent the second lady to visit in person, which was already very benevolent. Dongfang Hui smiled coldly. The second lady of the Su family was unknown. She didn't expect her to be so eloquent. "Yu is a little unwell, but it's not a big deal. It's just that she was resting just now. I'm afraid she can't see you. It's better to wait for her to get better, and then invite you to have a small gathering." Qin Jing smiled and didn't force her. Yi Li smiled and said, "In this case, we shouldn't disturb Miss Dongfang's rest. But, when we were outside, we happened to meet Princess Xixia. She said that His Highness King Li has come to your mansion and hasn't returned. Mrs. Dongfang, please tell His Highness King Li that Princess Xixia seems to be looking for him for something urgent. If there's nothing, he should go back quickly. Otherwise, Princess Xixia will come to the Dongfang mansion soon." "Princess Xixia?" Dongfang Hui's face darkened slightly. She said lightly, "Why don't I remember which country's Princess Xixia?" Yi Li smiled apologetically. "I forgot. It's Miss Xixia. This girl has been with King Li for many years. She is deeply trusted by him. Since the message has been delivered, I and Jing will leave first. Mrs. Dongfang, please send our regards to Miss Dongfang." Yi Li stood up and prepared to leave. Before Dongfang Hui could say anything, she saw Mo Jingli standing at the door. Seeing Yi Li and Qin Jing, Mo Jingli's eyes flashed. "Prince Ding Mansion and young Madame Su are also here?" Yi Li's calm eyes swept over Mo Jingli, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. "I heard that Miss Dongfang is not feeling well, so I came to visit." So Prince Li is indeed in the Dongfang estate. It was rare for Mo Jingli to feel a little uncomfortable. Using such a method for the sake of infinite boundless mountain's power, it naturally could not be considered as just and honorable. Especially when he was in the Prince Ding mansion and did not even care about such things, he still valued her so much that he did not hesitate to use such despicable means. Naturally, people who saw this would feel that they were at a disadvantage. However, no matter how proud and arrogant Mo Jingli was, he still understood that he was not Mo Shuyao. Mo Shuyao could disdain infinite boundless mountain's power, and did not want their support, but he, Mo Jingli, could not. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to face this reality. However, under such circumstances, when facing Yi Li, Mo Jingli could not help but feel embarrassed. In this world, the thing he was most unwilling to lose face in front of Mo Shuyao and Yi Li. However, the heavens did not go as he wished. Miss Dongfang is fine. She can come out to see you in a while. Mo Jingli said. No matter what, since things had already reached this point, he naturally had to confirm this matter first. As long as this matter was confirmed, Mo Jingli was not worried that Dongfang Hui would go back on her words and not help him. If Dongfang Hui went back on her words, then Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation of being chosen by the heavens would also become a shadow. Both Infinite Boundless Mountain and Dongfang Hui could not afford to lose face like this. Yi Li's eyes turned slightly, her smile tranquil. Looks like we seem to have missed something? Or is it that Infinite Boundless Mountain's joyous occasion is approaching? That's right, Mo Jingli said in a low voice. When the time comes, Princess Ding and Prince Ding can come and have a drink together. Yi Li laughed inwardly. Mo Jingli indeed valued Infinite Boundless Mountain greatly, actually intending to hold the wedding directly in Glass City? If Prince Li intends to hold the wedding in Glass City, Prince Ding and I would naturally be honored. Congratulations, Prince Li. Mo Jingli looked deeply at Yi Li, saying in a low voice, many thanks. Mo Jingli, don't even think about it. I'll never marry you. Yi Li and Mo Jingli's side were very harmonious. But outside the door, Dongfang Yu's voice had long since lost its usual calmness and gentleness, and was instead a little sharp and piercing. Everyone turned back and saw Dongfang Yu standing at the door, glaring angrily at Mo Jingli, who was talking to Yi Li with red eyes. Qin Jing looked at Dongfang Yu with some surprise. The previous few times they met, she always felt that Dongfang Yu was like a fake soulless dummy. Now, however, the angry white-clothed woman seemed more real. It was just that the light purple marks on her low neckline made Qin Jing blush involuntarily, and she hurriedly lowered her head, too embarrassed to look again. You. Dongfang Hui reprimanded in a low voice, displeased. Dongfang Yu was startled and looked at Dongfang Hui full of grievance, saying, Master, I don't want to marry this beast. Mo Jingli's expression changed and he looked at Dongfang Yu with the same displeasure, saying, Dongfang Yu, don't think that you're the only one who is wronged. Are you blaming I for this matter? You made yourself into this state, I can be considered your savior. Dongfang Yu gritted her teeth, saying, I don't need a bastard like you to save me. Mo Jingli laughed coldly, saying, You want others to save you, but they don't want to bother with you at all. Or maybe Miss Dongfang likes to randomly grab people on the streets. Dongfang Yu's face paled. Compared to having sex with Mo Jingli, if she was really thrown on the streets, no one knew better than Dongfang Yu the power of the backlash from the internal injury. If that was really the case, she really could be on the streets. Enough. Dongfang Hui interrupted her, saying coldly, Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Dongfang Yu was startled, and looking at the cold expression on Dongfang Hui's face, she finally couldn't help but fall to the side of the table and sob. Yi Li sat at the side and watched and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Compared to the Infinite Boundless Mountain's successor who had a high and mighty face, and advised everyone according to the script, this crying girl in white was much more adorable. Unfortunately, this matter was completely her own fault. Using such a charm to control Su Qingchen, the Su family naturally couldn't sacrifice themselves to save her, so Dongfang Yu's tragedy was already doomed from the moment she had such thoughts. Dongfang Hui looked down, hiding the emotions in her eyes, and then looked at Yi Li, saying, Princess Ding, I still have some things to deal with here. I won't be entertaining Princess and second young Mistress Su. Yi Li also tactfully stood up and smiled, saying, We've disturbed you, Mistress Dongfang. Please do as you please. I'll take my leave. After bidding farewell to Dongfang Hui and Mo Jingli, Yi Li and Qin Jing had just walked out of the door when they heard Dongfang Hui's exasperated reprimand coming from inside. Dongfang Hui had been in charge of the infinite boundless mountain for more than 20 years, and she had a steady personality. To be angered to the point that she couldn't wait for the guest to leave before scolding, it showed that she was very angry with Dongfang Yu. Chapter 8:20. After leaving Dongfang Hu, Yi Li and Qin Jing looked at each other and smiled. Qin Jing asked curiously, "Will Madame Dongfang really marry Miss Dongfang to Prince Li? I think Madame Dongfang and Miss Dongfang are not happy about it." Yi Li smiled. "Miss Dongfang is really not happy about it. As for Madame Dongfang, she is just not happy about Dongfang Yu marrying Mo Jingli under such circumstances. If Dongfang Hui was not willing to return to the infinite boundless mountain and wait for the next 60 or 70 years, Mo Jingli was her only choice. As long as it dragged on, she would agree to assist Mo Jingli sooner or later. But that was the infinite boundless mountain's choice of master. The infinite boundless mountain stood at the top of the hierarchy. And now, Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu had such a relationship. Dongfang Yu had to marry him even if she did not want to. But the relationship between the two families was probably a little awkward. And in the hearts of the scholars in Dechu State, the status of the infinite boundless mountain would plummet. Needless to say, with Dongfang Yu's character and temper, she would definitely not work hard to assist the future holy concubine Xian. And this was the purpose of Yi Li and the Prince Ding mansion. How could the Prince Ding mansion give Mo Jingli such a big gift for no reason? And now this big gift looked very nice, but who knew when it would become a ticking time bomb? This Miss Dongfang also brought this upon herself. She is a good girl. Qin Jing sighed. Although Dongfang Yu looked miserable, Qin Jing would not give her any sympathy. She wanted to manipulate people's hearts just because she had some special skills. She even disregarded the wishes of others to marry her. Such a person could only be said to reap what she sowed. Yi Li smiled. Even if today did not happen, I'm afraid that Madame Dongfang will marry her to Mo Jingli soon. Second sister-in-law, you don't have to feel sorry for her. Qin Jing smiled and said, I won't feel sorry for her. As long as she doesn't harm our Su family, it doesn't matter who she marries. Yi Li nodded in agreement. Exactly. Sure enough, a day later, Dongfang Hui announced the marriage between Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu. Dongfang Yu would marry Prince Li as his official wife. The news from Dongfang Manor and Princely Post House had specially emphasized that she was the official consort and not the equal consort. Although the equal consort was not considered a concubine, she was still inferior to the Di Fei. While Mo Jingli had promised not to cripple Yi Ying, Infinite Boundless Mountain would not suffer such grievances. Thus both sides compromised and took over. Both were official concubines of the same age. Mo Jingli was now the regent of the Dechu state, so he naturally did as he pleased. Following that, he issued an edict, naming Yi Ying as consort Rong and Dongfang Yu as consort Min. Both of them were the regent's official consorts. Why do I feel that Mo Jingli was mocking them by giving them this title? Yi Li asked after receiving the news that Mo Jingli had conferred the title of regent's official consort. Yi Ying had no one to rely on in the Dechu state. She had no children and no favor. How could she bear the title of Rong? And Dongfang Yu had schemed against others, but she had schemed against herself. The title of Min was more like a joke. Mo Xiuyao said nonchalantly, maybe it's because Mo Jingli wants Yi Ying to live a prosperous and stable life. At the same time, he also wants Dongfang Yu to grow some brains. For something like a title, if it's not reality, then it's hope. Yi Li smiled and casually threw the letter on the table. She smiled. I was still thinking about how to deal with the matter of Dongfang Yu and the Boundless Mountain. I didn't expect it to be resolved so easily. Mo Xiuyao said with a smile, it's all because of young Master Qingchen's unparalleled wisdom. The way he pushed the boat with the current is admirable. On the other side, Su Qingchen, who was writing with his head lowered, raised his head and said with a faint smile, if it wasn't for Prince wanting to watch the show, how could there be such an effect? If it wasn't for Mo Xiuyao suddenly wanting to see if young Master Qingchen could resist the temptation of the art of enchantment, and not letting the guards act first, Dongfang Yu wouldn't have had the chance to use the art of enchantment on him. Naturally, there wouldn't have been such a thing afterwards. So at the end of the day, Prince Ding was the real culprit. Mo Xiuyao didn't feel embarrassed at all when his bad intentions were exposed. He rubbed Yi Li's hair and said with a smile, "That's why we know that young Master Qingqian's mental fortitude is rare in the world." Back then, Dongfang Yu had only used a little bit of it in public, and even many experts with profound internal energy were affected. But this time it was only targeted at Su Qingqian alone. Even after using all his strength, he still failed. It was enough to see how firm young Master Qingqian's willpower was. Or it could be said that it was enough to see how cold-hearted and emotionless young Master Qingqian was. Other than those who already had someone in their heart and didn't care about the beauty of the world, only those who were truly cold-hearted and emotionless could be so indifferent to such temptation. It seemed that it was still too early for the Su family to see young Master Qingqian settle down and start a family. Su Qingqian smiled faintly and said, "Prince Ding, you flatter me. Something is going to happen at the border." Su Qingqian's hand that was holding the booklet paused. Mo Shuyao raised his eyebrows. Su Qingqian said, "As soon as Yelu Yi left Fei Hong Pass, he began to gather his troops. I'm afraid he wants to fight with us again before winter arrives." Mo Shuyao was startled by this, but he wasn't surprised. "Where's Ren Qining?" Yi Li frowned and said, "Ren Qining already said goodbye this morning. She should have left Glass City by now." Mo Shuyao lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. He looked at Yi Li with a smile and said, "Li, we have to prepare for war again. This time, it's the time of Yelu Yi and Helianjin's death." A cold light flashed through his eyes. Yi Li was startled and said with a smile, "Okay, let's go together." Chapter 8:21. After the announcement of the marriage between the Li King Manor and Infinite Boundless Mountain, because the dignitaries of the various countries had already left, this marriage did not cause much of a stir. And as the main character of this marriage, probably only Mo Jingli was truly happy. Him choosing to hold this wedding in Glass City was more or less a show of force to the Prince Ding mansion. But thinking that it was the Prince Ding mansion that had rejected Infinite Boundless Mountain first, giving him this chance, this show of force could not help but become a little more awkward and boring. Along with this, his originally extremely respectful and careful attitude towards Infinite Boundless Mountain had also become 70%. Compared to Dongfang Yu's resentment and rejection of marriage, Dongfang Hui's mood was similarly bad. Actually, after the Prince Ding mansion had rejected her proposal and she had rejected Ren Qining, Infinite Boundless Mountain's only choice was Mo Jingli. But choosing Mo Jingli and marrying the descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain was a world of difference from the current situation. Originally, when Dongfang Yu had married into the Li King Manor, Infinite Boundless Mountain was naturally still high and mighty. But after this matter, when she married into the Dechu state, the feeling among the officials was completely different. And Infinite Boundless Mountain could not even do anything to reject Dongfang Yu's marriage. While the matter between Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu had not been made known to the entire world, those who should know were already aware of it. Faced with such a grievance, Infinite Boundless Mountain had no other choice but to swallow it. These messy matters caused Dongfang Hui to be extremely vexed, and even the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family were angered to the point of hating them. Actually, after the Prince Ding mansion had rejected Infinite Boundless Mountain, Infinite Boundless Mountain's situation had already been a little delicate. If they did not immediately stop caring about these matters and return to Infinite Boundless Mountain to hide from the world, they could only choose another person to assist them. But in this way, Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation of being chosen by the heavens would be greatly damaged. Originally, they had chosen the Prince Ding mansion, but the Prince Ding mansion ignored them, so they chose someone else. This meant that this so-called ruler of the world was not fixed at all. Since that's the case, with all the heroes vying for supremacy relying on their own abilities, why should your Infinite Boundless Mountain be the one chosen by the heavens? It was also because of this that the news of Mo Jingli marrying Dongfang Yu did not cause too much of a stir. The power of Infinite Boundless Mountain naturally caused others to be envious, jealous, and hateful. However, with the addition of Infinite Boundless Mountain, many people could also clearly see the drawbacks. It was just that he couldn't let go of the reputation of being the chosen one. Since Infinite Boundless Mountain's so-called reputation was now mostly empty talk, a bunch of ignorant women no longer seemed so important. While Mo Jingli and the Dongfang family were busy preparing for the wedding, the Prince Ding mansion was not idle either. From Mo Shuyao and Yi Li to the ordinary soldiers of the Mahist army, all of them were preparing for battle. The high-ranking generals of the Prince Ding mansion were even more clear that this battle was a true battle to the death with the Northern Tribe's army, to avenge the death of the previous Prince Ding Emoshuan when the Mahist army was almost annihilated that year. Not a single soldier of the Northern Tribe's army who had stepped into the pass would be able to return. Inside the Nanzhao post house, Yili and Princess Anqi sat opposite each other, leisurely sipping tea. Princess Anqi's belly was already not small, and it was obvious that she was going to be a healthy and strong little prince or young master. Princess Anqi's usually bright and cheerful face now had a hint of gentleness and grace. No matter how powerful a woman was, as long as she was going to be a mother, she would always have some gentleness and love on her face. I've been busy these past few days, and now that I finally have some free time, I'm going on a long journey again. I actually can't entertain you properly. Yili looked at Princess Anqi with an apologetic smile. As the queen of a kingdom, Princess Anqi naturally didn't have the same topics of conversation as the other women. However, Yili was also very busy these past few days, and she was somewhat lacking in hospitality. Princess Anqi said with a smile, "You and I are both people with no choice. Why are you apologizing? Are you also planning to go to war with Prince Ding this time?" Yili nodded and said, "Of course." Although she was worried about the two newborn children, Yili was even more worried about Emo Xiaoyao, who was going to the battlefield. Last time he almost lost control in West Hill, and this time he was going to face the northern tribes in Helianjin, who had almost massacred half of the northern Dechu state, and who had a deep hatred for the Mahist army. How could Yili be at ease if she did not go with him? Speaking of which, she felt a little sorry for the three children, as Emo Xiaobao had been raised by the Su family these past few years. Now the two children were only 2 months old and they were going to war again. The children had to be taken care of by first aunt and second aunt. Speaking of which, back then I also wanted to gallop onto the battlefield, but I didn't expect you to be one step ahead of me. Princess Anqi sighed with a smile. Ding Wangfei can be said to be the first female general in the world. Yili smiled helplessly and said, "What female general? When have I really led troops to war? I just followed along and watched." Princess Anqi smiled and said, "Yes, how could Prince Ding allow you to lead troops to break through the enemy lines? Wang Fei should have been the strategist who came up with all the strategies. Isn't there a saying in the Central Plains, fierce generals are easy to find, but strategists are hard to find?" Yili was silent. Was there such a saying in the Central Plains? After a moment of silence, Yili smiled and said, "Now that the Central Plains is in chaos, it is the queen who is leisurely away from the world, making people envious." Nanjiang was remote and had been a barren land since ancient times. While the past emperors of the Central Plains liked to fight, no matter who ruled, no one had truly conquered them. It was not that Nanzhao was very powerful. While Nanzhao's people were valiant, it was a small and barren country with not many soldiers. The past emperors attacked Nanzhao either because Nanzhao had violated the border, or because they wanted to expand their territory in times of peace, to add flowers to the brocade in the history books. No one would truly use all the power of the country to attack Nanzhao, because even if they succeeded they would gain more than they paid. Once war broke out, the heroes would not have the mind to care about Nanzhao. They would fight for the rich lands of the Central Plains, so who would have the time to care about a small country on the border? It seems that the queen really does not have the mind to participate in this chaotic world? Yili asked with a smile. Actually, she could understand Princess Anqi's thoughts. Although Princess Anqi had the talent to govern a country, she lacked the domineering and ambitious nature of a woman who desired to expand her territory and achieve great things. This was not a bad thing for the people of Nanzhao. While Nanzhao's army was strong, there were only a few 100,000 people in the country. There were also many tribes that did not listen and did their own things. In this chaotic war that could break out at any moment, Nanzhao's participation would only be cannon fodder. Princess Anqi shook her head and stroked her belly. She smiled and said, "I only hope that the people of Nanzhao can live and work in peace. My child will be born and grow up safely. In the future, when the throne is passed to him, his life will be complete." Yili sighed softly and said, "Ordinary people only seek peace in their lives. If the queen can protect the people under her rule, she will have done a great service." Princess Anqi smiled and said, "Now that the Central Plains is in chaos, only the people under Prince Ding and the queen can live in peace and do not have to worry about the suffering of war. It is no wonder that on our way up north, The people in many places remember Prince Ding and the Queen. Chapter 8:22. Yi smiled faintly at Princess Anshi's praise. In life it was enough to protect the peace of the people. As for merits and demerits, there was no need to care so much. Reporting to your majesty, Princess Consort. There is a woman who calls herself Princess Xixia outside the door requesting an audience. The attendant outside the door respectfully reported. Hearing the attendant's words, Princess Anshi frowned slightly and said with some displeasure, "What is she doing here?" Princess Anshi's heart had turned cold towards this sister of hers. Princess Xixia was her only biological sister, but when she fought with Shu Manlin in their youth, it was so difficult and dangerous. It was fine if Princess Xixia didn't help her, but because of Mo Jingli she even helped Shu Manlin against her. In the end she ran to the Dechu state and refused to come back, losing the face of the Nanzhao royal family. Even when the two sisters met in Glass City this time, Princess Xixia's words were filled with dissatisfaction and jealousy towards her older sister. Princess Xixia only remembered that she was made the crown princess and inherited the throne of Nanzhao. However, she didn't think about the hardships she had gone through when she was framed by Shu Manlin and suppressed by her father. It was better not to have a sister like this. Forget it, she should be returning to Jiangnan with King Li in a few days. Let her in. Princess Anshi said faintly. The attendant accepted the order and left. Yi stood and said, "You sisters reminisce, I'll take my leave first." Princess Anshi hurriedly pressed down her hand and said, "I don't have much to say to her. You're about to go to war and I don't know when we'll meet again. Just sit down." Yi originally wanted to leave some space for the two sisters to talk alone. Seeing Princess Anshi like this, she didn't refuse and sat down again. Not long after, Princess Xixia walked in. Seeing Yi sitting there, she was startled. Then she walked in front of Princess Anshi and called out timidly, "Royal sister." Princess Xixia was 28 or 29 years old this year. Although she was still beautiful, she was no longer a young girl. This appearance made her look less delicate and pitiful. Instead, it made her look more pretentious. Princess Anshi frowned slightly and pointed to the chair next to her. "Why are you here? Sit down and talk." Princess Xixia didn't get the desired effect. She lowered her head in disappointment, walked to the chair Princess Anshi pointed at and sat down. Princess Anshi asked, "What happened?" Princess Xixia bit her lips and said with red eyes, "Prince Li is going to marry Dongfang Yu. Please help Xixia, royal sister." A trace of gloominess flashed across Princess Anshi's brows. In this short period of time, Princess Xixia had come to the courier station a few times. She had said that she wanted Nanzhao to put pressure on Prince Li's manor so that Prince Li would officially take her as his consort. Princess Anshi naturally didn't agree. Even though she was the queen of Nanzhao, she couldn't control who the prince regent of Dechu state married. The Nanzhao royal family had long lost the name of Princess Xixia, so it was not proper to manage her. "How can I make the decision for Prince Li to marry Dongfang Yu? Xixia, you're not young anymore. Can't you see things clearly?" Princess Anshi frowned. Princess Xixia said with grievance, "But that infinite boundless mountain is extremely domineering. Dongfang Yu forced Prince Li to promise that in the future, there will only be two consorts in the Prince Li's manor. No one else will be given a status and no one will be able to give birth to a child before Dongfang Yu. Even if Prince Li ascends the throne in the future, he won't be allowed to make me a consort." Thinking of how arrogant Dongfang Yu was in front of her, Princess Xixia couldn't help but want to stab her to death. She was also a princess of a country, but she was being bullied by a country bumpkin. Unfortunately, she knew that whether Mo Jingli liked Dongfang Yu or not, the people he cared about the most right now were Dongfang Yu and Infinite Boundless Mountain. If she really did harm to Dongfang Yu, Mo Jingli would probably kill her first. "Princess, this Dongfang Yu." While Princess Anshi knew a little about Dongfang Yu and Infinite Boundless Mountain, she didn't know much about them. Yi shook her head and said, "How can Dongfang Hui not say it? Dongfang Yu has been reciting the ways of a wife, a concubine and a queen all day long. She can't wait to be a living female saint. She shouldn't have made such a rude request, right? Princess Xixia probably hasn't said anything yet, right?" Princess Anshi looked at Princess Xixia. Princess Xixia's expression changed slightly. Biting her lips, she said hatefully, "It's that Dongfang Hui. She said that my status is too low to be Prince Li's consort. Princess Xixia's status was low? Of course not. While the nobles of the Central Plains looked down on the small border countries, they would still give a certain amount of respect to the status of a country's princess. But Princess Xixia was different. Everyone knew that the Princess Xixia of Nanzhao no longer existed in the world. Princess Xixia was a consort conferred by the late Emperor Mo Jingqi. While she had died of illness before the conferment ceremony, so she wasn't able to enter the royal family's genealogy, she was still Mo Jingqi's woman in name. And the current Xixia was only a concubine of unknown origins in the princely manor, who was already nearing 30 and still didn't have a status. Dongfang Hui was not wrong to say that her status was low. Actually, Princess Xixia's feelings towards Mo Jingli could be said to be truly deep. This was something that even Yi Ying could not compare to. But it was really hard to say how big of a place Princess Xixia occupied in Mo Jingli's heart. After so many years, if Mo Jingli really wanted to, he would at least be able to give Princess Xixia the title of prince consort, instead of letting her stay in the princely manor so awkwardly and without status. Now that the descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain had married into the princely manor, Dongfang Yu was no longer the Yi Ying who had no one to rely on. It was no wonder that Princess Xixia was anxious. Princess Anqi looked at Princess Xixia, asking, "How do you want me to help you?" Princess Xixia's eyes lit up as she hurriedly said, "As long as royal elder sister agrees to form an alliance with the Dechu state. My Nanzhao strength is not inferior to Infinite Boundless Mountains. This way, you can naturally ask the princely to formally take me as his consort." Impudent. Hearing this, Princess Anqi could not help but fly into a rage. Looking coldly at Princess Xixia, she said, "I thought that you had matured over these years. I didn't think that you would still be so mischievous. You want me to drag the entire Nanzhao and its sons into the flames of war of the Central Plains for your personal matters? As the princess of the Nanzhao, have you ever done anything for the people of the Nanzhao? What do they owe you? For your position alone you want to risk your life?" Being reprimanded so mercilessly by Princess Anqi, Princess Xixia was also stunned. Staring blankly at Princess Anqi, she said, "Royal elder sister." Princess Anqi waved her hand to stop her from speaking, saying mildly, "You don't need to say any more. If that princely of yours is really a good person, I wouldn't mind taking a gamble for you. But let me tell you the truth. I don't think highly of him. If you are willing, you can return to the Nanzhao with me this time and find a good man to marry. Even if you are not a princess, no one in the Nanzhao will dare to bully you. As for other things, you don't need to think about them." You're tuning in to the Biao's Wuxiao Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.